Give me 1 second. I'm getting it hooked up here. All right, I think we're good.
Oh, just a question. When you go live on YouTube, does that actually open up? That puts you into YouTube, you got to close out of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, or I can mute it. It doesn't matter. I don't have to keep it open, so to speak, but it does open it so I can at least see that we're good.
Right. So if you close it out, it's still doing the recording.
Oh, totally. Yeah, but it just automatically pops up on my screen. So I just closed it just to. Okay, I think I'm ready. If you guys are ready, you guys ready? All right, welcome everybody. This is January 16th, 2021, and this is the Scarborough, Maine Town Council goal setting workshop for the next year. Right off the cuff, if you are watching or in the audience, this is a pretty casual meeting, so there's going to be, we do have structure, but you won't be seeing us taking any sort of formal action, and we reserve the right to, I believe, interact with each other quite casually. So Don and I talked yesterday about this, and just I think as a quick exercise, I'll pull up our previous year. I'll lead it with things that we accomplished, and then I'll just pull up the goals that we set for ourselves a year ago as well. And then we will use those as just a time to reflect on the year. I think if Peter Hayes was here, he would agree that it was quite an intense year. So we deserve to take a second and look back on it and see accomplishments. And it's also a good refresher on what we've done. So I believe this is it. I'll just read them real quick. Number one is we budget passed in the first round overwhelmingly. I believe it was a 2/3 margin. Coincidentally, that is the third year in a row. So the town has passed the budget in the first round 3 years in a row. I think 3 years. I think we're allowed to call that a trend now. Kept the mill rate under 3%. I think more specifically, we kept the mill rate under 1%. I think when it was all said and done, we came in under 1%. Council and town continue to conduct their business through the pandemic. I think everybody deserves more credit for this. It was quite difficult, and I don't think we missed a beat or a meeting due to the pandemic. We were able to maintain municipal jobs. Kudos to Tom for taking initiatives in the beginning, taking advantage of some state programs that helped him furlough people temporarily. But when push came to shove, I believe we did not eliminate any positions that were held by somebody. More public transparency with information. Don and I think on a continuous basis are always trying to push for transparency. I think Don has said at least a half dozen times that transparency is hard, and I wholeheartedly agree. Sometimes in an effort to make things easier, it makes things difficult. We passed our credit enhancement policy, which was about a year and a half, 2 years in the making. We did a resolution on the Piper Shores. We had a resolution of the Piper Shores litigation. I believe that was something that was hanging over our head again for a couple of years. So it was nice to put that behind us. We implemented marijuana process. So kudos to the ordinance committee, I think, and Betsy for really taking the lead on that and fleshing out the process. Downs project, we are, I think it's fair to say we always have something with the Downs project that we're dealing with, whether it's an amendment or presentations or what have you. We always have something with the Downs progress, and I think we do our best to keep up with them. Assisting businesses for the outdoor seating. So I think twice we have extended restaurants' abilities to operate outside. We started the process for the GMO and the comp plan. I know there's been a little bit of frustration on the pace of that, but I think all things considered, we're sticking to what we said we're going to do, and we're slightly behind maybe our original timeline, but I think we know there's external factors involved there. 2 ad hoc committees for downtown district and the charter review. We assisted the Historical Society with the preservation of the schoolhouse out on Holmes Road, and I drive by that every morning. It is, I think progress came to somewhat of a halt, but we did just get an update, and they've done some good things. It definitely, just driving by, it looks a lot better. The foundation is clearly repaired and redone. Communication improvements. We have new website, enhanced and consistent public communication through the Scarborough Leader and newsletter. Again, thanks to Allison as our new communication coordinator who has helped us with this. I think her and Ken have developed a pretty good cadence of getting consistent information on a timeline that's predictable, which I think is a big part of communication. Number of workshops in 2020. Perhaps Tom doesn't think this is an achievement, but we've done. There's been a lot of workshops in 2020. Significant increased opportunity for public comment, engagement, and participation. That goes to the workshops. I think we fill 2/3 of the committee vacancies in 60 days to start January and February. So appointments and negotiations. And Don, I know Don takes that very seriously, and as he should. Support and approval of the funding to establish the daycare center in response to the increased demands of service for COVID-19. So I thought it was just appropriate to take the minute, just look back at the year, where we've been. Any musings or thoughts or anything anybody wants to add? Councilor Clucci, or John, I should say.
We passed a couple of resolutions recently on public safety and racial equity that I think are significant enough to include in that list. The fact that we did so unanimously, I think, is special. I think that's a challenge. So I think that's something that I definitely proud of last year. We also approved funding or credit enhancement agreement for Jocelyn Place. And we went through a pretty lengthy process to understand the details of that. And that's something else that I think is worthy of making the accomplishment list.
Yep, those are great. I will add those after the. Tom, are you writing those down so we can add them later? Okay, perfect. Good.
Paul, if I could suggest that we make sure these get posted, like on the website, and maybe put it in the leader so people can see, because people forget what we've done. Sometimes I think they think that we don't do anything except meet on the first and third Wednesday of the month. So
yeah, I think
maybe to piggyback on that, Jean Marie, a little bit, like having somebody, as we talk about like the communications from the communications committee and topics, this might be something that we want to highlight early in the year, to your point, through the different channels we talked about, just to show,
right.
And like maybe Paul or Don or somebody can champion those communications.
Yeah, I would say the chair and or vice chair or both.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and totally. I'll talk to Allison. She's good at taking these things and dressing them up and put it like John
I
said.
just want to say, sorry, can I just, my comment to you all is just kudos to you guys for everything that you accomplished last year. I know I'm relatively new and haven't been a part of a lot of those, but just with COVID and the wrench that threw and everything, to see that list, it's super, super impressive. So, I hope everybody feels really, really good. I know there were things that were planned that maybe weren't achieved, but when you just look at what was achieved, it's pretty remarkable.
I like this patting ourselves on the back. Let's just do this for 2 hours and we'll call it.
Well, that was like Citizen John,
not really my
like
comfort
sharing
zone,
my
but,
perspective.
But you could add the senior tax credit increase, because I think that one is unique to Scarborough. The way that we do it, I don't know if people understand it totally in terms of what it means, but we're like one of the few places that do it. And it is really for the those who really have an income issue. I'm not saying that right, but it's definitely for people who are in a position that need it, I guess is the better way to say it. It's not for people who don't need it.
Right, and it's fully refundable too, which is important. It's cash back, so they can use the cash for like heating costs or whatever in the winter, the timing of it. So yeah, I've always liked that tax credit.
Right. And of course, we were on different sides of some of these issues, but, we did attract WEX to come to town. It was an accomplishment at the time. Thanks to the pandemic, everything has changed, but it was, it was definitely something new for Scarborough to get a business like that.
Yep, those are good. Yep.
Actually triggered my mind. We actually did a lot of work on a community center as well. We may not have finished it, but I think there was a lot of progress made in defining what some of the desires are in town around that space.
That's very true.
Yep, definitely. Don?
Yeah, one thing to build on this, and I know we made a bit of a joke about patting ourselves on the back, but an old buddy of mine who was, you know, industrial psychologist and a sales guy, wrote a book called The Benefits of Positive Self-Talk. So, I mean, this is important that we take the time to do it. Number one. Number two is there's a mutuality about this. The fact that, well, we really didn't do this ourselves. It wasn't just council goals and, something that, and if you look at the list, they meander all over the place, but we wouldn't have accomplished any of it without working in conjunction with the town manager and town staff. And oh, by the way, the public, the stuff that we're working on is not just stuff we dream up. It's a function of their focus and their feedback and actually their involvement. So I think there's a really good story here about that as we prepare to, get this out on the wire.
Yeah, it's a Scarborough story.
Actually, to add to that, I thought I'd show you a little anecdote. You guys probably saw the email of the gentleman from New Jersey that had emailed the council and asked about the racial equality resolution. So he called me and we talked, and we had a really interesting conversation. And I felt pretty proud to say that one of our residents wrote that resolution, right? So that was pretty cool because he was looking at a split vote and he was having a hard time. It's one of those things where, it's an uncomfortable conversation. It's at a governmental level that is some would say not wholly appropriate, or it's just a difficult. I think we all know the difficult friction involved there. And I still don't know who wrote it, but I think John and Betsy, particularly Betsy, were instrumental in doing it. And so it was pretty cool to say that to him, to say, hey, that was just a resident. And secondly, he was going through archives of our YouTube channel, and he blown away by the structure of our meetings, how he could find our stuff. He had to go outside his bubble. He said there were 17 people, 17 surrounding communities had passed that resolution, and it had failed in a couple communities. And he couldn't go to those surrounding communities and go on YouTube and to look at the meetings. And so he was blown away about the fact that was all just right there, and the way our meetings were structured. It's still a mystery to some people how Zoom works so smooth with our meetings. And so anyways, you guys, that's all of us. That's, it was pretty cool to talk to somebody, no idea,
You don't even have to go to Connecticut or New Jersey,
Right.
where that
Yeah.
guy was from. There are towns in this particular area who also, when I'm at the Legislative Policy Committee for MMA, they're always saying, how does Scarborough do it? Of course, they always say, what the hell's going on in Scarborough? But it works two ways. When you have good communication, then people feel free to communicate. So there you go.
Yeah, well, good for him, because it's pretty hard to find stuff on the website and on the YouTube channel. I was looking for a particular finance meeting, and I was actually going to record it, but I didn't have time to show how difficult it was to find the recording. So while we're patting ourselves on the back, we still have some improvements, definitely to make on the, I wouldn't call it communication, because I think we've improved communication. I would call it just the technology front. The newsletter yesterday, I thought was great. It really focused on how to get involved. I think almost the whole thing was about that. So I think communication definitely has improved. I do think, we still archiving where documents are gathered. The budget portal, if you go through it from last year, it's just not easy to navigate. If you look for specific things, we lost all the indexing off the website. So I really think I wasn't too thrilled to see the website on the list, because maybe it looks a little better, but we've actually lost quite a bit of functionality on it. That's just my personal opinion. So, I hope that we focus on that website and maybe even fund, we did it on the cheap, we did it on, with money or, whatever, with no money. But I think, we may want to invest in that, because it's not just our tool for people to find things, it's our archive. Because we've been talking about this in rules and policies. It's actually, where is the book that says the rules and policies that run the town? Well, guess what? It's what's listed in the website. Yeah, there's hard copies back there, but it is really an archival tool as well. So, it's just kind of putting a plug in there that there definitely is some work that needs to go on that front, but communication has actually improved. So we're getting more out there under more channels. It's never enough for a lot of people. But, you know, I can't think of any more channels than we could be trying to communicate on. So, yeah, and the type of things that we're putting out, more information from counselors, you know, Allison's, the newsletters, I think, like I said, the last one I thought was just really good. But the website itself, or that which is really like a repository and the first place people go, it's really got to be improved some.
Well, Betsy, thanks for bringing us crashing down to earth. So we had different positivity. So I guess let's proceed with the misery.
That's the bugaboo of continuous improvement, right? There's
I'm just gonna go stand in the rain for a second. I'll be right back. So.
Hey, I said some good things in there too. That's great. We have improved communication.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, let's look at the goals that we made last year. Nope, that's the wrong one. Give me 1 second. I think my screen share is gonna. Okay. So about this time last year, I believe, right? I think we did it right around this time last year. Our goals were, prepare a 5-year financial plan to forecast operating expenses, revenues, and integrate with a 5-year CIP, complete by September 2020. Quarterly workshops with the following agenda: review quarterly financials, a detailed presentations from 2 department heads with an emphasis on financing and pipeline projects, agenda items, etc. 3, council agrees to strive to maintain no more than a 3% increase in the mill rate. And 4, council agrees to revisit the growth management ordinance as required by the current ordinance. In conjunction with the BOE, the town council will come to an agreed upon set of facts and language for use, for all to use and reference. I won't bother with the norms. Those norms were carried over, I believe, from a year or 2 previous. I think Jean Marie might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think those came from Peter.
Some of them, yeah, some of them carried over.
Yep. I think we had my first year when I was first elected, Don and I first came in, we had a 2-hour workshop with a consultant, I believe, to help us with the dynamics of the council. And we found commonality in the fact that we all just wanted to get out of there. So that was good. That was our first.
That's right.
I wish I had a tape of that meeting.
We all rallied around the
that
fact
was a good one.
we don't want to do it anymore. But there was pizza, if I remember, and that made, so anyways, same thing. If anybody wants to muse or reflect on those, I can bring them back up if you want to reference them. But
well, I think I sent it out to everyone. I just took these. Again, the norms look fine as far as I'm concerned. When I was looking at the goals, I think they're still ongoing goals, or I don't know if they're goals of the council per se. Mr. Chair, do you want me to continue with my thoughts? Or?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on the first one, prepare a 5-year financial plan. I underlined or circled revenues because it's very hard to do a 5-year projection with public revenues, given that our revenues are mostly based on property taxes, and then you have things like pandemics and whatever come along. Unlike a business where it's a little more predictable. So, I had some questions about that. And I also was wondering if this is more for the finance committee to take on, but sorry, John. And then we have review quarterly financial reports. And then I had a question, what's on them? Again, I see that as a financial committee doing that, maybe making a quick review out perhaps to us. And then a detailed presentation from 2 department heads with emphasis on finance. And I wrote which department heads, but then the more I thought about it, I think what was meant there is that quarterly you take department heads from each different departments and have them present, I think. I don't know, that was pretty unclear to me. And then I just struck pipeline projects and I just put review and schedule upcoming matters, which I think we've done a really good job this year. And I have to give Paul and Dawn kudos on that. And Paul, you do such a great job with getting on whatever it is you use to Loom and Zoom and this and that and the other thing, to put those out there, which I think is fabulous, because in my time on the council, I've never really seen that. So that's going to be a hard act to follow for someone. And then striving to maintain no more than 3% increase in mill rate. I agree that we want to keep that. And then just we could rewrite this about growth management and the growth management ordinance and the comp plan. I would put in there, we need to get those tied up, i.e. like I'd say sooner rather than later. I would also put something in there about we have to work, we got to repair our relationship with school board. Last year it blew up again, I think, in part because of, and this is my own opinion, their very poor communication on what they were doing with consolidated plans for so-called consolidated school. All of a sudden they came out and said, we're going to do this. And it's like, whoa, 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 who do you think's paying for it? And again, that's Jean Marie's reaction and whatever to it. I'd like to see something in there about how to acknowledge and address school building needs and working with the school board a little more closely on that, because I think that that's a real time bomb that could explode and go sideways and upside down. But that's what I had for my thoughts. But I didn't really change the goals. I didn't see anything more, but that's me.
Yeah, when I was reflecting on them, I think the pipeline project, I think we met that goal. It's not probably in the capacity that we originally envisioned, right? But I think the council and Tom deserves credit, and I think one of Don and I's number one priority is, the pipeline is, at least you always kind of know what the pipeline looks like, right? And I think between Tom's town manager report, Dawn and I trying to block things out in like 2 to 3 months chunks. I feel like that I'm confident saying, hey, I think that goal was met, so when I look at those, it wasn't quite, I think we were envisioning, let's workshop every quarter and talk about the pipeline. It doesn't look like the way I think we envisioned, but I feel like we did a good job with it. But yeah, Betsy, Jean Marie, I agree. I mean, by and large, some of these are finance. I would be willing to shift some of these to finance committee. One of my goals I think we should consider is no new large initiatives. I mean, we have such a full plate. I think it's a realistic goal to say we aren't going to take a quote large initiative on this year. We have too many. So, in a large initiative, if that's a revisit of a community center or what, I don't know what it is. But I don't think we should do it. I think we're spread quite thin. I think that we need to focus on the work that we have in front of us. But.
Yeah, and I agree. That's what my thinking was when I looked at these.
Yeah.
It's like we've got such a full plate, and it is what it is. And frankly, government doesn't move really quickly, nor should it, because I've always considered that our job is like taking hot tea, putting it in a saucer and letting it cool a bit, so that you can then drink it. I mean, that's one of the analogies that have always been given to me about government. Give a chance for people to weigh in and do the right thing, because otherwise you can end up with a real disaster. So
go ahead, John. Sorry.
Yeah, I would just say as we do this exercise, maybe it's helpful that we just focus one goal at a time and just kind of discuss what we think, and then then think about new things we want to propose, like what Jean Marie said about the school board, because I would really support that if we want to kind of talk about that and the school building. So just kind of focusing on that first one around the 5-year financial plan. you know, my perspective on that is that I think that's a good goal to work towards, but I think we need to get a little bit more clear on what success looks like for that in 2021. Because, you know, in my opinion, I think we're going to get so overwhelmed with the budget that I don't think we'll actually be able to really kind of focus on what we want to do there, probably until after the budget's been approved. And then what do we want to accomplish in 2021 relative to that? Because like Jean Marie said, there's many aspects in there that we could break down even further. And I agree that that's probably maybe the finance committee to kind of take the action to potentially say, okay, if we do want this as a long-term goal, because it could be a multi-year goal, what do we really want to make sure we're crisp in terms of what we accomplish in 2021?
Yeah, so Betsy, before I get to Betsy, yes, John, let's decide on what the structure of what we're doing is, and then Betsy, I'll go right to you after that. I was thinking we're right. I guess the question is, do we want to go line for line and either remove them and replace them, right? Or do we want to just right now say, okay, let's choose 4 or 5. I mean, they don't have to be based off those 2020 goals. That's an exercise of just reflecting. So yes, I agree. I guess my question is, structure wise, do we want to go down each 2020 goal and remove and replace or keep, or do we want to just build from scratch? I mean, and then it's up, I'm asking what everybody thinks is the best way to do this.
I would go down how you just,
Remove and replace and. Okay.
yeah, or,
Okay.
yeah, or brush up or whatever.
Okay, so once Betsy speaks, then we'll take that John structure and we'll go down each one and remove and replace or keep. So Betsy, you want to chime in, and I'll start John's suggestion.
Yeah, I want to remind people like that those goals, we fully made them with the committees in mind, and the committees taking up those challenges to bring that back to the council. And when we, discuss it, we knew that the committees would be doing the work, but it was, what do we want to drive up to the council? I mean, so the ordinances always get driven up to the council unless it just is a discussion, and then, and it doesn't make it out of committee. But sometimes the finance work doesn't always make it out of committee until we get to the budget, because the budget obviously makes it out of committee for the finance. So I think last year there was a focus on, should the council, the entire council, be looking a little bit more at finances as a council, not outside of the budget, outside of once a year. And I think, that was the intent of that goal. So just so that people understand what that was, it was to drive the work of the finance committee up to the council level, more than once a year or more than during budget season. Maybe 4 times a year was too aggressive, but the quarterly financials, because I think what we saw happen a lot of times is when something does come in front of us, like we had to approve the overage on the temporary building at, the temporary classrooms at 8 Corners. We get into these long things about, where does this money come from? And what do we have here? And then we have to approve, the bond issues or whatever. And sometimes it's just not very pretty. And I think part of that goal was to say, look, the council as a whole should be taking more public time to review some finances in front of the town. So that's what that goal was. It wasn't pushing it off from the finance committee. And I still think when we get there, it's, there's something there. It might not be this exact thing, but I still think part of that is a worthy goal.
Betsy, totally agree with your take. Yes, I think you're remembering that precisely accurately there. Yep. John Clucci?
Yeah, so it sounds like we're talking about the first goal. Anyways, or Betsy's comments were largely geared towards that. And I just wanted to communicate, we did talk about goals as a finance committee, and where we seemed to have alignment was along the lines of that first goal, actually, was creating better visibility into the future, the 5-year plan, so to say. And I think we're going to talk or review some of the work that's already been done at our next meeting, if we want to keep going with this goal. But I think as a finance committee anyways, we had interest in pursuing that. And we might have a different wrinkle on than how it was worded in the past. But I think the idea last year is we had a lot of things kind of colliding, right? At one time, without a lot of history or visibility into them, they seem to all be coming up at once. And I think what we want to try to do is create a better timeline for how these things might logically come to fruition, or how we might evaluate them objectively. Because right now we have a lot of silos, right? And there's nobody really looking at the macro level about where the priorities for the organization are. We have pretty good work that's been done to assess priorities at the departmental level, but when those things come together, I think we've fallen short. We can probably do better. So I think I'd like to see that continue to be a goal. It doesn't necessarily have to be a council goal. I think it's something that we may try to tackle as a finance committee as well.
And we do actually have a format that Tom and Ruth have worked on that it ended up towards the end of the previous finance committee. And we talked about it at the first new finance committee. And it's based on the budget, the tax comp rate sheet, that we're all very familiar with. And it would be looking at that more. So that looks very viable. I just don't want people to think nothing is done under there, because there are some things that we tackled to try to get things in a quarterly format that could be looked at. And Tom and Ruth, I feel this goal would have gotten a lot further without the pandemic, but instead of being able to work on that, Tom and everybody else was figuring out, what are we going to do when we lose 600,000 in revenue or something? There was a lot of work budget wise that had to change this year because of the pandemic.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I'll just mention, this is work that staff's committed to. Certainly, I expect Finance Committee will continue to be interested in that forward look. It's up to you whether or not you want to find ways or make time for this to be shared, to the council and more widely to the public, perhaps. Just appreciate, I think we did come back to Finance Committee and got some very good input on some key assumptions. Let's face it, these forecasts will be based on a lot of assumptions. And so that was very helpful. Larissa actually, helped me with that final piece. It was a gift she gave me before she left in terms of really identifying those assumptions and seeking feedback from Finance Committee. So we have that information. And Betsy's right, where we've landed, and we can certainly refine this further, is kind of a simplified format, largely based on the tax rate comp sheet display of information. And it's going to be a 3-year look rather than 5, just because we think our accuracy will be better with that shorter window. So again, from my perspective, we're committed to doing this, whether you make it a council goal or it stays at the committee level.
And the nice thing about the tax, the comp sheet format is, we already, I don't think people should think we don't already have like a look out, because we have the whole CIP and what years it's going to be there. You can look at it. But it also wraps up operating, and it wraps up, revenues we think we're going to get. So there's not a factor missing when you look at the comp sheet. Whereas we focused probably up till then on, this is when we think we'll need a fire truck. This is when we think we'll need, so that piece people should understand who are watching is pretty well laid out. And what, we pull in different pieces of it each year to the budget, but, sometimes, and that's going to be a challenge going forward, because we pushed a lot of that out this year for the pandemic. So we did very little of the CIP this year. So I hope people do understand that. So we'll see how all that's going. But so I think that our goal was to say, let's make sure we're looking at, as John said, the bigger picture, plus, not just the one factor, not just the capital, but, that includes our borrowing. It really includes everything when you look at the comp sheet. And we really were only looking at that once a year. And so that's how Tom and Ruth came up with that idea. And I think you may want to tweak it over the years or change it, but I thought it was a great start.
Mm-hmm. So the real question, Paul, is whether or not council wants to make it its goal.
Right, and that's after Don. I think I'm going to ask that question, and we'll move on. So, yep, Don.
Yeah, so I won't touch on that, but I did want to say, so of the 4 goals we had last year, half of them are financial, right? The mill rate and the 5-year plan and the various things that we've just talked about. I think a lot of the pieces are in place. I think what has not happened yet is that we haven't really built that into a rhythm, into, something that we have on a calendar or in a pipeline, so that we're hitting it, okay, each quarter close, once those books, middle of the following month, bang, we're reviewing those. And the more we see that standard format, the more comfortable people will be with understanding what's changed. And this is not only in terms of looking back, but also, refreshing, the go forward look, whether it's 5 or 3 years. So, I think I think a solution for this one is close by, but I think it's one of those things that would be an evergreen goal. It would be something that would be, on our list, this year. Again, maybe it's still 2, maybe it's those 2 combined to 1, so whatever. But I think we're on the right track.
Yeah, right. So I think, I look at this goal exercise as, this is the goal that we're trying to accomplish this year. And this goal to me seems like, to your point, an evergreen goal, right? So I think staff's committed to doing it. I think Clucci's the right man or person, I should say, at the head to do what needs to be done this year to get us closer and closer to that goal. So I guess, so to get down to it, I'm okay with not having this as one of our goals for this year because I'm comfortable with where it is, and I don't think it is specific to this year. So that's what I'll say. I would be in favor of removing it, not discarding it, just removing it from what we're trying to accomplish this year as a council in its entirety.
Yeah, I would like to still bring back, I mean, maybe, that we do get this done. I mean, we had it, and it comes to council and gets approved as a policy, or, the same way that you guys approved that thing when I was coming on the council. I mean, if we don't solidify it, so maybe it came too specific to the council this year, but it needs to be a goal to say that we'll pass something. We're going to pass what this is going to look like, and maybe that gives us a little more flexibility to say only twice a year we're going to review finances at the council level or whatever. But if we don't say anything, we're not going to get anything done. So I'm not for removing it altogether. I think the idea of reviewing look aheads at the whole council level should still be on there as, as a goal, in terms of at least we define what that's going to look like and what the schedule would look like. And that comes out of the finance committee to bring to council to pass as a policy.
Yeah. So what I would add, and it's kind of what I heard from Don, maybe in terms of the gap in what Betsy just said, that perhaps the goal is more around, establishing, a better operational process for how the town finances are brought to the council's attention in a repeatable and, planned manner, that the finance committee can help define what that looks like. But it sounds like we have a lot of the mechanisms, but like Betsy, like you said at the opening, the finance committee, maybe historically when it came outside of budget, didn't always bring stuff forward. And we need to probably just align on what does that look like? Is it a quarterly thing on the agenda where we want to kind of do a financial update? Like what is the process that we want to establish to make sure that it becomes part of our operating norms?
So here's a quick thing. I feel like at the end of our meetings, our liaison reports, I don't think that's enough for the finance committee, right? So, Clucci, sorry, I keep just casually referring to you as Clucci, but Clucci's like, yeah, we had a finance, and it's not no fault of Clucci's, but so perhaps what we do is just ask the finance chair to actually make a legitimate presentation every quarter, or, just that sort of idea, but.
I think
So
that's
I guess
yeah.
we need. I guess at this point, it seems like people want it to stay. Is that a realistic? I'm looking around. Ken, can you give me something? Yeah, no,
I think it
indifferent.
needs to be more what John said. I mean, it needs to be scaled back.
Well, I'm moving to the wordsmithing next, but
Okay, all right,
the
yeah.
fundamental question is: we want it there in some form, and I assume, I
form,
believe I'm seeing majority of people agree. So
I'm
now,
gonna say, I would say, let the finance committee chair make a quarterly report.
yeah, I mean, that's what, okay, Tom, and then we'll get to wordsmithing the goal.
Well, I'll just remind you all, a technique you used last year that I think was quite effective is that you identified a fairly nebulous goal, and then you tasked committees with coming up with action plans. So the goal could be that you wish for finances to be more regularly reported to the public and council, and then task the finance committee with coming back to you with a specific proposal as to how we intend to do that. You did that with creation of the different charges, I believe, were tasked to committees to work on.
So I'm gonna let, because we agree that it's gonna stay on there, and some people have thrown out some good ideas. John, as the chair of finance, do you want to take the first swipe at what this will read, and then I'll kind of have people, or John Anderson, you mentioned something that it was a lot. Does anybody have a synthesized way we can?
I think what Tom just said actually was a much more
No, me
simpler way
too.
of saying. And so
Well, that's
if
why-
you could say that again.
Yeah, Tom,
might
say that
help.
one more time, and let me see if I can type that out.
Sounded good.
The overall goal of council is for town finances to be more regularly reported to full council and public. And then more granularly, you could task the finance committee with coming up with a strategy or strategies to accomplish that goal. And that may involve additional report outs from the chair. It may involve quarterly or semi-annual workshops. I don't know what it would involve, but I think finance
Well, I
committee
think
could work
last
that through.
year, it worked kind of well. We didn't put in the, who was going to do it. We came up with the goals. And then in the meeting, when we announced the goals, we voted on, we're going to charge the finance committee with this goal. We're going to charge this committee with this goal. So I'm not saying we wouldn't have it in there, but I think last year when we announced the goals, that's when we charged the different committees with it.
Yeah, this is a slightly different approach. I think it largely toward the same end. So this is stating a goal and then creating kind of a tactic, how you're going to advance that goal.
Okay, that sounds good.
Should I say a system will be developed? Is that too?
I like the way Tom said it. I think it's generic enough. And then, but I think the idea or the concept is we need to get to a regular cadence and structure for how, and that's how you get to recognizing when things are off, right? When you're used to seeing something. So, and I think that so when we blow this down to the finance committee level, we'll come up with what it might look like in more granular detail. But I think at a council level, this is pretty good.
So what you see on your screen, is that what we want? I'm typing and listening. So just, can I hear, are you guys good? I can't see everybody, so.
I like it in writing. I like what what Tom said, and he states what we want to have accomplished, and boom, here's got who's accountable to to lead off. So and I know we talked to it last year, but sometimes we write stuff down and we the points we talked to get forgotten or morph.
So Don, what would you add to what you're seeing on the screen?
So town finances will be more regularly reported to the full council and the general public, and a standard format and timing will be proposed by the finance committee.
I like that. I see that. I like that. The standard format and timing.
And you could even say standard process, format, and time, whatever, but
You
that way,
you like to say a lot of those words in your sentence.
I know. It's brevity is a problem.
No, the standard format, and what was the
Standard format
and timing.
And timing.
To be determined by finance committee.
Yeah.
Too much time in corporate America, Don.
Yeah, I know. It's a bad habit.
What
Use is hard to unwind, so it's.
do we think about what we see on the screen now? Does that feel good to people, or?
I like
Hey,
it.
Tom, big companies could match and outperform local government, by a mile in terms of
I was
bureaucracy.
gonna say we get a bad name. Come on.
No, corporate America's worse, having worked on both sides of the aisle, let me tell you.
That's why I stay out of the real world as much as possible.
So
So
if I could put the air for a second. So the way I think about a council level goal, right, is we can all contribute to it. And that includes the finance committee, communications committee, maybe rules and policies. So and that's why I was gravitating towards, right now we're really we're pushing it to just the finance committees can handle this for us. And I think the goal, if it's the goal, is to be more open and transparent about our finances with the public. We can all contribute to that. And I think when we have a finance committee meeting, we might come back and say, yeah, you know what, we can develop a cadence, reports and whatnot, but communications might come back and say, you know what, yeah, we could actually try to get this out through these mechanisms. And, that's why I like to keep it at a high level for the council. And then so let's see how we all think we can contribute to achieving that goal.
I would just be afraid it might not be accomplished if we don't kind of give ownership to one of the committees, and then that committee could reach out to the other committees. Because I think, it's a good finance goal, because don't forget, we also review the annual audit. So that's definitely communicating out the state of the town finances. So that could be, included in part of what we're doing in terms of the way that it's worded, the standard format and timing.
So you've got the what, we're missing the how and the when, so, and maybe these are annual, so they haven't been done by the year, but is there something more specific that you need, or is it good enough with just the bullet that, it seems like whenever we're trying to get more specific, folks like what's there under the first bullet.
I think this is a good mix of general and specific. I mean, we're not Councilor John Clucci, we're not excluding the other committees from doing it. I mean,
Right.
John, I agree, John. Like if I were making these by myself, I would have that bullet. But I think at least that bullet is satisfying others to say, okay, at least we're saying we need this is a way of acknowledging we need to get our cadence, right? And then we're not excluding communication from still helping this larger goal. I don't want to go down and say what communication is going to do and then what rules and policy is going to do. I think that's a rabbit hole we should stay out of, but I'm comfortable with the way it's written. I'll go to all of us real quick I'm seeing people nodding their head. Are we good with the first goal?
Good.
All right, I'm going to move on. Good? Okay.
Yep.
Second one, is it horrible that we should just delete this because this is the same thing that we just talked about? Is that okay?
Yep, delete it.
All right, let's go to, we'll add something here, but let's keep with this. Pipeline projects, agenda items, etc. Oh, sorry. This was caught, I got this from a PDF. So council agrees. Let's just go with this one first. And then this was quarterly pipeline department head workshop. That's what this was. Okay, so let's go. The goal was, the stated goal was something along the lines of having a quarterly pipeline / department head workshop. So let's speak specifically to that goal.
Well,
I'm
that's where I was confused the way it was written, because I didn't know if you meant all department chairs are reporting quarterly, or are you going to say like first quarter's police and fire, second quarter's finance and whatever?
I think that was the thought. I think this was a case of us probably trying to get too specific. But
Paul, I'm not sure you put it up there again, because I'm looking at the actual PDF.
yeah.
And it was under quarterly workshops.
Oh.
It was a third bullet. It was under review quarterly financial reports, a detailed presentation from 2 department heads, pipeline projects, agendas, et cetera. That was the third bullet under the quarterly workshops that you just deleted. And then a new bullet all by itself was council agrees to strive and maintain no more than 3% in the mill rate. So I think it's already out. I can't really show you my screen, but I'm looking
Yeah.
at.
I can pull it up. It's right here.
If you pull Jean Marie's, you can see it, or the other one.
It's right here. I got it. There we go.
Yeah, as I recall, the goal was to hold quarterly workshops. and that
Right.
These were agenda items that we thought we'd try to strive to touch on at those workshops.
Yeah. So
Right.
right. So I guess that's what I was trying to say. I guess so. Are we? So we're discussing the goal of quarterly workshops. Is that
Yeah,
what-
quarterly workshop was not a goal. But we just deleted it. We all agreed to delete quarterly
Okay.
workshop.
well, you don't tell me twice. All right, cool.
Well, now understanding that one a little bit more now.
Bring up the PDF, the actual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll bring it up right now. Yeah.
See it? It makes more
Originally, I
sense
thought
when you bring it
originally,
up.
originally I interpreted that as a financial workshop that would be built into part of the process or whatever that we would.
It is, if
create,
he
but-
brings it up.
Hey guys, just let me bring it up and we can discuss this at all.
Butchering our documents.
It's just,
Boy, this is a classic case of the big picture versus the linear.
let me just bring it up. I just closed it on accident. I'm sorry. Hold on.
Throwing random bullets places. We can't function that way.
Well, it's because I converted a PDF to a Word document. It got weird. Hold on.
Well, I thought you said it fine. I didn't have an issue. I think we're gonna delete it anyways.
You guys can have your love fest somewhere else. Get
Yeah,
this.
well, all right. What I was trying to paraphrase was the quarterly workshops. Quarterly workshops with the following agenda. So I guess I feel like I'm repeating myself, but are we deleting the quarterly workshops? I see where the confusion was. I get it. I deleted half of the agenda for the quarterly workshop. So we're looking specifically at the quarterly workshops with the following agenda. Okay, Don, would you like to speak to this goal that is in the original format signed by me as is?
Couple. Okay, two of the three sub bullets are financial. They were quarterly financial reports and a detailed presentation with an emphasis on finances from the department heads. The third one is purely pipeline, which I'm assuming spoke to other issues. So the only thing left there is that last sub bullet, the third sub bullet. So is that enough to put in the oven here?
I vote of removing this goal altogether because I feel like we just discussed the two bullets, and I feel like we have the pipeline project problem. I think we're doing that. It's obviously that doesn't mean we're not gonna stop doing pipeline, but I feel like we're doing it. So
As I recall, it's what Tom was saying. It was going to be a part of the quarterly workshop. So now we've replaced that with a part of what the finance committee is going to report out on what should that format. How did you say it, Don? Something in format.
The format, the process and timing.
Right. So I feel that that's a really high level goal, but we got more specific last year. We're saying we're going to go more generic at the council goal, and the finance committee is going to report out on what that's going to look like. But we can still remember this from last year and say, hey, we probably want to include these elements.
So we're in a different place. The question is the goal written in such a way that we'll be able to execute it, and are we losing anything? So I'd
like to reiterate, I would just like to erase this goal because I don't think we need it. Tom and then John.
Look, it seems to me the one thing that everyone agrees on is that, the larger goal in my mind would be no surprises, right? And the way you've been able to avoid that largely is efforts of Ken and Don and I in the weekly leadership and communicating out is telling you what's coming at you as far ahead as we can with certainty. So, that's very, very lofty, not very detailed, but I think my sense is that's an important feature for this group to work it well as a body is no one likes to be surprised. Tell us what's coming. I think with this leadership, it's done very effectively, and I expect will continue to be through the mechanisms we have in place. Whether that continues, that's for a future council to decide, but just offer that up as a suggestion.
John A.
So I would just say, as part of my onboarding, when I met with some of the department heads and just had more of a conversation with them about, not so much financial, but more like what's top of mind for them right now? What are some of their key challenges? What are things that they wish they could do that they can't do today? Like those are really insightful. And I feel like I only get those when I talk to them. And so I don't know if there is a mechanism that exists today. And Tom, I'm assuming as part of how you manage, you have something in place where you're getting that information. And I don't know if there's a way for you to kind of bring that to the council somehow. I know we have your weekly report where you're focusing on like the priorities,
Yeah.
but just kind of having a better sense, by department, maybe some financial, maybe that's part of something the finance committee can talk about, but like that doesn't tell us like what their current challenges are, and I just found those conversations to be super insightful. So I don't know if there's a way to kind of help bring that a little bit more in a systematic way. And again, I'm assuming you have that because, that's your job. And so I don't know if there's a way for you to kind of share that more broadly with the group.
Yeah, I did misunderstand this. I see why you pulled it out now, Paul. I think it is different. And I think the pipeline projects, we should find a way to better do what John said, better incorporate them into the public, because even the updates we're getting, the public doesn't always get them. We know we are starting to put them out. So maybe that's the goal, but maybe the goal is, make sure that we're, make sure that we're communicating pipeline projects to the council and to the public. So that's not a very good goal. It's not very specific. So, but I see why you pulled it out now. I misread this.
Yeah, John Anderson, I fully appreciate your point. And I'm thankful that you're interested in hearing what's on staff's mind. That is my job. I am in tune with what those are. I would say, and it may not be terribly effective and obvious, but you'll see those priorities and initiatives come out through budget requests. That's kind of the consistent way. And again, that's probably clouded with all the other noise as part of budget. But that's how those priorities really get advanced. Often there's a funding component required. With all due respect, I'm not sure if the council has the time and the bandwidth to be able to spend a couple of hours and to have an open conversation with, probably 4 or 5 of my key staff members. And I'm just saying that out of the practicality of your time and attention. I suppose you can make it, but you're starting to load yourself up pretty heavily then.
And I do feel like we're starting to dip our toe into taking on a new initiative, which I just don't like. I don't know. John, I completely agree with what you're saying. Like when I sit down with Jay or like actually have a conversation, it's much more insightful because you don't have those barriers of the structure of government. But I don't know if spending a workshop. Workshops are precious at this point. I don't know if spending that or committing to doing that is just something that we can do, but I'm
Yeah.
open to it.
I don't necessarily think it needs to be workshops, and I don't necessarily think it needs to be department heads with us, but maybe again, like when I read that initially, my reaction was, it seems like the council isn't getting certain information that we would like to be getting on a more regular basis from the department heads. So is there stuff we feel like we're not getting that we do need? And if not, if we feel like we're getting it, then yeah, we probably don't need that goal. But if there are gaps where we feel like we would like certain information on a more regular cadence, and again, maybe that comes from Tom, not from the department heads, because he's getting that information from the department heads, I'm assuming, and should be that filter to bring it to the council if there are gaps.
Dawn, and then
Can
Dawn,
I insert something here? And
well, Dawn was
again-
being very
I
patient.
have a,
Oh,
She can go ahead. Jean Marie can go ahead. I talked a lot.
January, then Dawn, then that's it.
I
Thank
have
you.
a suggestion.
I think that one of the things we're forgetting that this is devolving into, it sounds like the council, and maybe I'm mishearing this, is looking at micromanaging the town departments. And I hope that's not what we think we're doing. We have a town manager who manages for us. So I don't need to hear from department heads other than at budget time, frankly, as to what their goals and whatever are. Obviously, if there's something that's really special or needs a lot of, us weighing in, that's fine. But we're really like the board of directors, and Tom is the CEO. So we shouldn't be mucking about in the micro things. Let them do their jobs. Our job is to set the budget and to set the tax rate and then set our overall policy for the town. So I mean, I'm just feeling like this conversation's devolving a bit.
I don't know.
So, I'm just gonna, I'm not done
pipe
yet,
in on
Betsy.
that.
And then,
It's Jean Marie.
and I think that's what we need to,
Right.
keep in mind.
Yep. So, I don't know, Don, you had your hand up.
Go ahead, you go ahead, and I had a point, but you're touching on something I was going to address, so why don't you go ahead?
Yeah. So I have a suggestion because I think this is a huge thing for the town, people in the town and for the board. So, I drove by, Payne Road recently, and now we have a big sign up, which looks nice. It says Scarborough Community Services. And I bet there's more than a few people that are actually shocked that the Scarborough Community Services has moved, across town. I don't know, what the long-term goals are or to keep them over there. We're told they've run out of space. So, they all moved, which I wasn't aware of when we were setting up the daycare, that the entire department was going to move. And so I think, to take a page out of, the BOE or another BOE I sat on, we used to get regular presentations as a part of the meeting from a department head. And they would go over, here's the things that we've accomplished. Some of them went on really long, but they're supposed to have a time limit. So you're talking about, 10 or 15 minutes. And, if we have 5 or 6 department heads, that means you only have to do it, every, maybe we do it once a month or something instead of both meetings. But, and then they could say, Todd could say, these are the things I'm really looking at. We're hoping, we're looking at doing the redoing the beach bathrooms. These are, so that way the department heads could put together a presentation that would tell us and the public the things that they're looking at, not necessarily what they're going to do, but here's what we've accomplished. Here's what we're looking forward at, because these are the things I think the public gets absolutely shocked at. And it doesn't have to be a workshop, but like I say, many board of directors and boards do a function like that. And I found those presentations, unless they went on too long, absolutely fascinating, because it gave the level down from the top administrator, which in this case was either the superintendent or the town manager. It gave insight into the amazing things actually that those places are working on and accomplishing. And I think it's definitely worth having that at the public level. We don't get that at the public level hardly at all. And I think the town is often surprised by things that happen. That work is happening behind the scenes for months. So that would be my suggestion, that, we have, department head presentations on a regular basis. And maybe it's rules and policies or communications committee, works with Tom to talk about a format for that. But I'm with John. Those things really are the things that really get the public, and it's not micromanaging. It's finding out what they're doing, and also what the thinking is for looking ahead.
I would just add to Betsy's comment that, again, if we're going to use the board of directors analogy, it's very common for once a year at least for the different heads, at least at my organization, to get in front of the board of directors and share more of a strategic view of what's going on and where they're going, and not necessarily tied to budget, but just kind of like where they think they need to focus. So I don't think it's an appropriate, do we need it quarterly? Probably not. Maybe it's a semi-annual check-in where we just kind of have department heads come and do something, but not make it a micromanagement focus, but really just a high level strategic view from their lens of, what they think needs to be considered for the town. And again, I think that ties in a lot to what we just talked about around that 5-year plan and where we want to go. Like it might not be things we need to act on today, but it might be things that we or future councils need to think about as we plan for the future. So again, like that's my view on it. I don't think maybe as it was written, maybe it was too prescriptive, but there's value, I think, and like Betsy said, at an appropriate cadence at the appropriate level to allow the department heads to share a little bit strategically where they want to go.
So real quick.
And I agree with that.
So yeah, I guess this was born out of, first of all, this happens at the budget season. These guys, at our will, we request any department head we want, and we get the update from the department head, right? And
At the budget, at the finance committee.
correct, but it's the budget season, so we're all very well in tune. And this council, we all go to each other's committees more than anything. So, and with our new YouTubing mechanism and everything, it's, you know, it's all archived. So I guess I think what this is born out of is that, you know, in budget season, I think there's times that we felt like we were scrambling to listen to if we wanted every department head, we didn't necessarily have time to do it. So I think the historical context to this was that sometimes we end up picking and choosing departments because those are the departments during budget season that are, you know, we want to hear from. And then it's possible that we don't hear from a department because we don't need to. Community service comes to mind last year or the year before. You know, their budget tends to, you know, a lot of their revenue offsets their costs, and everybody kind of loves community service because they fund themselves by and large, right? And there's a staffing plan for police and fire that everybody has to re-educate themselves on every year. So usually it's police and fire that come up. So I think that's what that was born out of. With that being said, I don't support making a department head report out as part of our goals. I think that I feel like that we all can't, I don't want to take anything extra on. And as a guy that tries to organize all of this, there's no room to do this. So that's my opinion as a counselor. So.
Yeah, I'm Don.
And honestly, I think the
I
community
don't want
service
to jump in on Don, but
Betsy,
this,
hold on.
this isn't totally born out of budget.
But the community service example, if I'm being honest, is a little conspiratorial here. We have a community service staff that is doing double duty. They're watching kids and trying to answer phones. So, you know, I guess I'm going to reject the notion that the people of Scarborough are flabbergasted that the community service says. I think
it
it's
was a special circumstance, but this happens all the time. You know, we find
I don't think that's accurate. I don't think it happens all the time at all.
Yeah, but we find out, you know, stuff just gets brought to us when it's on the 90-yard line because it's been worked on, just to get a glimpse of the future a little bit more is what this was about. And it wasn't tied to the budget either. You know, yeah, I'm not picking on community services doing that. I think that could have been communicated better, that there was a plan to move the whole department over there. But you know, it was very special circumstances. So I'm not really picking on that one. And I don't have, you know, other examples, you know, out of on the top of my mind, but, you know, even the things that, you know, might not be budget, you know, if we're planning a major rezoning or something like that, you know, we're looking at the impact of having these zones here or something, might be something. And it's also a chance to say, look, you know, this is what all we're working on and what we're accomplishing. So I don't think it's what you said, Paul, and I do think it could be fit in.
Okay, so Dawn, and then somebody has to pretty much, I think, state a goal they want to put, and we'll up and down it, right? So at this point, so Dawn, you want to say your piece, and then somebody want to offer up a goal, and we'll up and down it, I guess. So
yeah, so my bias is to hone in on stuff that pops up. Okay. And I've gotten chewed out more over the community services, office change than anything, but there was an explanation for it. Okay. These things happen in the normal course of, operations for the town. So I've worked very hard to try to, not be swooping in on stuff that does not require, our input. On the other hand, there are things we need to kind of pull to the fore. And we've, in the past year or so, we've done a very good job, I think, of doing that, of cutting down the number of things that are surprises and making time available for the things that we think are really important, the ad hoc committees, other things like that. So I don't feel a huge deficit, as a leader in terms of, what Tom and staff are doing and what we think the priorities should be. So I don't really see, I know we're struggling really hard to come up with an objective here. I think that 80% of what we're talking about will come out in the budget cycle. I used to work in organizations that had annual operating plans, and you go unit by unit, and I see the value of that. To John's point, I mean, there's a really good rationale for that. But we've got other things going now that I think are going to be shining bright lights on most of the top priorities. So I don't really see this making the cut in terms of something new as a goal. But I'm willing to hear somebody make a make a proposal and vote on it.
Yep, that's good. Clucci, and then maybe John or John Anderson or Betsy can propose something, and then we'll move on. So,
Yeah, I
Clucci-
mean, to Don's point, I think the mechanism is there already through our budget work and finance committee, and it may just be requesting more specific strategic information from the department heads when they do their presentations. So I think we've got it covered.
Yeah, after hearing everybody, you know, I would just say, I think we can table this because I think part of this might get flushed out a little bit based on the first goal we established. I think this is good discussion to help, you know, us as the finance committee, John, think of how do we approach this. And I think Betsy, as a member of the finance committee, has some ideas, it sounds like, that can help shape. So I don't know. I honestly don't think we need a separate goal at this point. I think we can consider this conversation as we work on the first goal.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we are going to. So just so I'm not jumping the gun here, I'm just going to eliminate the second goal that was written from last year. Okay, I just make sure I'm doing it right. So the next one we're talking about is the council agrees to strive to maintain no more than a 3% increase to the mill rate. And just, I guess the historical background to this is typically there was, you know, when budget season kind of came up, there was a workshop that we would kind of get around the table and just discuss what we thought the goals were. And I believe the historical context to this was coming out of this year, we had like a half-hour workshop and it felt very, very rushed. And frankly, I think it wasn't unanimous. It wasn't just 7 of us going, yep, 3% mill rate and move on. There was, I was an opposing voice. I think Betsy might have been an opposing voice for a different reason. But it was just, we didn't feel like it was a half hour. It was quick. And I think we all walked away frustrated. So I believe this boiled up afterwards to say, hey, let's talk about this right now.
I can tell you that the 3% was not a number plucked out of the air. Some statistics were done by, I believe it was Will Rowan. I think, Tom, I'm looking at you, who looked at historically ups and downs and whatever. And we honed in on that 3%. So that's not a number that was just plucked out of the air unscientifically.
Right. And just to reiterate, this is why it was on the year's goals. I think I don't want to get lost in I mean, this 3% goal has been around for 10 years or whatever since Will. And so I guess what I'm saying is, why was this explicitly written as a goal for the year? So just to remind all of us, we're doing, you know, goals for this coming year. And that's why I believe it's on there this time. John?
Yeah, I support keeping this goal. I think it's about the right number and a little background. Costs go up every year, right? There's inflation, but we don't revalue our properties every year. So your mill rate is a function of how much you spend or collect from your property holders in relation to the value of their property. And if you hold the value flat, aside from new properties coming online, you would expect that rate to go up. If we revalued the properties every year, then you would expect your mill rate to stay the same, roughly, because your expenses typically follow the value of your homes or your properties. So we're not doing a reval this year. There's, you know, aside from extraordinary circumstances, the assessed value of people's homes are going to stay the same. I think 3% growth in inflation is probably a conservative number given what we're seeing in the housing market right now and in consumer spending. So I think that's about the right target. It says 3% or less. The only caveat I'd like to, you know, possibly ask us to consider is, let's try to fix it. So I know there's some science behind it, Jean Marie, but somebody needs to make a decision about how much we're going to spend or collect from our taxpayers in town. And that's us. We can make that decision early in the process and then fight about what we're spending that money on, whether it's going to the right places or departments, or we can try to fight about whether it's the right number as we move through the process. And one thing I'd like to see us do this year is let's try to hold true to what we initially come out with as our target. And then let's have some real conversations about whether we're spending it in the right places. And I think that's a subtle difference from what we've done in the past. It's not big, but I think it could add some value long-term.
Yeah, and I'm going to say the same thing you just did, but wouldn't it be nice to say, I mean, musing here, but we're going to increase the mill rate exactly 3%. And then we know exactly what the money is. And then the whole conversation from then on out is, where's the money going? Whereas we talk about the budget process has been so hyper focused on the mill rate. Frankly, we don't actually ever, in my opinion, I've said this since I got elected, we don't ever really have the conversation. We complain we're not having the right conversations, but we've created a structure that promotes not having the right conversations, right? And so I wholeheartedly agree. I would say that I would love to have a goal that said it will be 3%, because then we know exactly what the money is. And now let's talk about where it's going. Ken, and then Betsy.
Yeah, I think maybe we should have a discussion on expanding the goal a little bit. This is the way I look at it. You know, we all know the budget that gets voted on is the school budget, but there are two sides of the ledger in our budget process. I would like to see that both sides of the ledger hold at 3%. You know, 4 years since we've added a police officer, because the municipal side keeps giving back to the other side to drive down to 3%. I think each side of the budget should stand alone by itself at 3%. That's what I would think we should expand the goal to.
Betsy?
Well, I think, Paul, you and I have had this conversation and we're saying the same thing. I mean, we hyper focus on the mill rate. So even if we said, yes, we're going to say it is 3%, we don't really know what that means for spending. And then as Ken just pointed out, you know, the way the revenue comes in, the town gets the bulk of the revenue from the state, the excise taxes and all that. And so that's a function of how we end up driving down on our side, as well as spending cuts. And then the school gets, you know, state sharing. I mean, so I'm just talking about the unknowns that we have a little bit that we have to predict. You know, I've always felt that this would be a better goal to talk about budgets and not mill rate. I think I'm in the minority on that in terms of, you know, the way people want to think about it. But companies, you know, drive their budgets. Yes, they have to think about revenue as well. But, you know, how much do we really want to go up on the budget? And I think, I'm not sure we could do it this year, but, you know, there's baked in budget increases because of mostly because of labor. And so when you get to the school side, you know, I'm not sure what their baked in budget increase is, just based on their wage contract, which is their major expense. But, you know, I think it's really hard to do mill rate. I think the town would be well served to start focusing more on budget, and then the mill rate comes out where it comes out. But that's you know, that's what I think. It would be a tough switch. It's challenging, but Paul, you and I have had this conversation because we don't get to the real conversation. I mean, and then you look at budget increases, and, you know, we've had, you know, Public Works has stayed at a very low budget. And I can't remember, I haven't done the numbers in a while, but some of the public safety departments, their budgets have gone up quite a bit, even if we haven't hired anybody, if you just look at budget, not mill rate. So, and the admin has gone up quite a bit, and there's good reasons for this, but we don't focus as much on the actual budget when we start talking mill rate.
Yep. Don?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far. You know, that it seems like that the 3% has served a purpose, but it's not the whole story, and it has some inherent flaws with using that primarily. The other point that I think was made, I think a really good one from Ken, and I think we'll be hearing more of this possibly in terms of suggestions for charter changes, but we don't really have a way to hold each other accountable, a town and a school, in terms of, you know, spending and funding. And then the third part I will say is that, you know, we're doing a good job, I think, of detailing out what we need to do financially, but nobody's mentioned anything about how we are funding it and how much debt we have. And there's a whole, you know, set of cost drivers associated with that. There's got to be some way for us to, that's not on the list at all. And so, you know, I guess I'm defining the opportunity, but I don't have a solution, but I think this is a good discussion.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing that's always sold me at the end of the day, or at least made me just kind of be okay with it, is we serve the residents care about their tax bill. And so this is a commitment to the residents that we won't increase their taxes. And really, a certain amount. So at the end of the day, I've always been okay with it because
Yeah.
there is merit behind communication wise. It's just easier to tell a resident, we're not going to raise your taxes more than 3%. And at the end of the day, that's always kind of won out and me said, and it made me say, okay, all right. But I wish, our budget process is, it's, and to Peter's credit, and I think that's this, and Tom's credit, because I think it's been kind of this, this friction has been difficult, but our budget process is, can we cut that? Can we cut that? Can we cut that? Because our mill rate's at 3.8. And so all we do for a month is, can we cut that? Okay, we're at 3.2. Can we cut that? Okay, we're at 3.1. Can we cut that? Okay, great, we're at 3. And then we all pat ourselves on the back and put it to a vote. And that's frustrating.
And unfortunately, that month-long conversation, I feel like we're sharing the load. I don't feel the reciprocity from the other side of the ledger.
Yep.
Largely.
So anyways, I don't know. I don't really have I think we all agree. It's such a tough conversation.
I mean, this is
Go ahead,
one that I've kind of debated a little bit, and I'm with John in that I think, at least for right now, I think that's a good goal. But I think what we should probably do, and I don't know, again, maybe this again falls to the finance committee, is really kind of figure out how do we establish good comprehensive budget goals, with the mill rate being one factor, but what are those other things that we need to look into so that we can all look back and say, are we achieving all of those things? Because the mill rate is one component, but there's probably other things we need to consider as well. I don't know what they are, but I feel like that's work to be done to really kind of work and figure that out. I don't see us doing that for this year's budget. I see us potentially maybe doing something that could help us for the next year's budget to get a little bit more comprehensive. Because again, I think there's been so much, this mill rate is really part of our town culture. To shift away from it too quick without a really solid plan, I think won't work. And so I think we kind of got to stay the course for now for this year, and then hopefully work to figure out what is the right path going forward. So I would be more of a proponent to kind of just make that a priority to say, and again, probably not something that will start until after this year's budget's approved, but like after it, have a retrospective, look at what happened and figure out what's our plan to kind of create a more comprehensive approach for how we do budget going forward.
John, that was very well said. I'm 100% on board with what John Anderson said. And furthermore, I'll be off the council when you do the shift. So I am.
Short timer.
Tom, do you have something to say?
You should never say that sort of thing because you make yourself a lame duck real early.
I'm never a lame duck.
Betsy's comments was music to my ears, because the reality is you control what we spend. That's what's within your control. The other factors you might have an opinion on, revenue forecasts and this and that, and future value. But what we spend is your mandate. That's what's in front of you. One way that we might be able to strike kind of both chords is this overall lofty goal of, at the end of the day, when all's said and done, tax rate no more than 3%. But to get there, and this has been a technique developed in the last couple of years, really guidance to the BOE and to myself, is that we've also had an additional first reading goal, and that's more focused on appropriations, what we spend. And if we start correctly, based on how our organic growth and our value increases, it really sets us up to end and achieve the overall goal. And the way those numbers shake out essentially is the school needs to be at or below 6% of spending increase. And I see John shaking his head. And the town is something lesser than that. So I'm just trying to suggest that there are ways to introduce the spending focus, which is really where the conversation ought to be, that will set you up for success in the ultimate goal at the end.
Yeah, and I think the pandemic didn't, because the pandemic hit during budget season last year. We had reached, somebody help me, but I feel like we, through the work of Peter and you, Tom, and the rest of us, but I feel like we had reached a different place that did feel better. You were producing something at first reading that didn't lend to, okay, I'm coming in at 5 and we're gonna hack job this. Like I feel like we did, the sub goals were working last year, I think.
Well, and then the wheels fell off
And
within
then
a
the wheels
matter
fell
of
off. Right,
overnight.
right. But that
Yeah.
first reading sub goal, I feel like we all were feeling pretty good about it, but it's a blur at this point. But
John Colucci, what did I say wrong?
Well, if you don't want to plan next year's spending based off an average of the past. You need to look at what your capacity is and what your other constraints are. And if you're filling a gap, right? Let's say our school spending has been dramatically too low for a number of years, then yes, you would expect your spending to increase 5-6% so that you can close the gap over time, right? So that we're spending in line with what our peer school districts are spending. In my opinion, we've closed that gap. So if you want to continue on that 6% growth, then you're only going to be taking it out of the town side. I think we're at a place, and I wouldn't agree with what Ken said, because I think there's some, technically it's not sound. We're saying a 3% increase for the schools versus the town. I think you need to factor in capacity. And you have some fixed costs and you have some costs that move based on how many students you have, or in the town, how much crime's going on, or how many people are using your library. It's not as simple as just say 3% here, 3% there. That it's easy to understand. And I think to John's point, I think it probably would be beneficial if we set an overall goal, say 3%, to then have the finance committee move that down a level if we need to split it between the town and school. I don't know that we're in a position to be able to do that effectively this year. I think you need more than one meeting. That's really all that we would have. So I guess I would be comfortable at the council level saying 3%. I would just caution you, Tom, by telling the schools that they can come in at 6%, because I think you're going to be pinching the town side too much.
Yeah, fair enough. But I guess the larger point was, and really to Ken Johnson's point, I'm agreeing with you, 3%, we can't be treated equally. Their organization is different than ours in many, many ways. And so theirs has to be a slightly higher number, whatever that is. Just keep in mind, this year was so different. Our gross budget is up $11,000 over the prior year on the town side. Simple restoration of some, I don't have any illusions of restoring all of that. That's $625,000 that we took out of the municipal side. That's before we even talk about increases, contractual increases, much less new initiatives, much less new hires. So we have a huge task just digging out of the hole that we created for very good reasons in the current year. And I think the school has similar challenges, not quite as acute, but that's going to be a huge challenge for us to meet any of these even historical goals.
So I'm hearing that we're going to keep this goal, so I'm ready to move on. Betsy, you want the last word, and we'll move on to the next goal?
Yeah, well, I think one of the challenges, and Jean Marie brought it up, how things kind of went acrimonious, is because, the school, I think that they do want, what Tom said, they want a budget goal, because they don't calculate the mill rate. In the end, like I said, a lot of the excise tax, the state revenues and all of that come in on the town side. Obviously the borrowing, comes in on the town side. And then we come to this magic mill rate number. So I think, we keep saying not this year, but I think we've said that last year and the year before. So I'm not sure how we craft something to ever make this happen, but I'm sympathetic with what Ken and Tom said, and that, we probably, and really John Colucci, you were really saying the same thing. I think we do need to get to a point where on the school side, we are setting some type of a realistic budget increase, for the year. So I don't have a great idea of how we get there. And maybe, like you said, JA, it's a way we can, we can work on in the finance committee, the way the previous finance committees did. But I think if we want to include it in the goals, it would be 3% mill rate, and that, we set first reading targets, the way Tom said. We don't have to say what they are today, but that we make a commitment to set first reading budget targets, not mill rate targets, but budget targets.
Yeah,
That
my
might be a way to
proposal,
get to both.
yeah. My proposal for this meeting and this group is we keep the current goal as it is. And then I'm wondering if there's an opportunity, because I know the BOE is also doing their goals workshop. Do we want to try and create a joint goal that we're going to partner after this budget cycle to figure out and try and come up with some solutions for a lot of the things we're talking about? And I don't know if it's the finance committees from both that, you know, need to partner on that, but I just feel like there's an opportunity because this isn't what we're trying to do. Some of it's within our control, some of it's not, and we need them to kind of partner with us. And I think we need to kind of agree on what's that joint goal and approach we want to take to kind of address some of the concerns that we're talking about.
I think if at a high level, we said the mill rate is less than 3% and the goal, and we will set first read budget targets for both the town and the school, that would mean we would have to work together if we're not prescribing the method of how to do everything.
So just for reference, that was a change that was made a year or so ago, where
Exactly.
we agreed to specific first and second reading goals. So no, the targets may be different. We agreed to targets at that time, or a range for those numbers.
Right.
But we spent a lot of time and energy on that.
And
And
that was through joint committee, John, that was through joint finance
Yeah.
committee.
so,
can I want to wrap this up. So I guess the only question is, hi mom, are we, sorry, my mom just showed up. Are we doing Betsy's suggestion of, we're not talking numbers, but is there a sub thing is that we will produce a net budget goal? We don't say the word net, but we're going to produce first reading budget goals for both town and school. So that's the only question on the table, I believe. Did I say that correct? So let's do this quickly so we can move on. Clucci, are you in favor of that or not?
I am, and I think I'd be aligned with Ken's suggestion of 3% school and town, and we'll work out the wrinkles. I feel like we may be walking into a messy situation. So I do.
3% what, John? Mill rate or?
3% mill rate, yeah, and you can.
So what does that mean for the school to say a 3% mill rate? Because the mill rate is for the whole town. So to me, if we don't set budget targets.
It's 3% growth in their mill rate. So you can look at your historical school mill rate. We
Right.
included in the budget package.
3% in
They're going
there.
to grow that 3%.
Okay.
And same thing with the town. And we may need to shift things. That part I'm open to shifting as we go through the process. But I think to level set expectations, I think that's a reasonable starting point.
Okay.
Don?
yeah, I'm in favor of, leaving the goal as stated, but adding that we would set, in addition to that, we will set budget goals for first and second reading. That's something I assumed would carry on year after year after we did the joint council recommendations, the joint council and Board of Ed recommendations. So I think would be helpful in the least to reinforce that and to stipulate that.
On the second piece, do you want to add a level of collaboration or suggestion that decision be made jointly with our
Yes.
school colleagues?
Yes,
How would that happen?
that's a great catch, Tom. And I think that ties back to a point that John Anderson made at the beginning of the session, that we have a general need to collaborate better and to, improve our relationship with the BOE, and we need to put the time and energy into that. Thank you.
So I'm actually not in favor of that language. So I'm going to go rogue here. I actually think our problem the last year or two is that we try to collaborate too much with the BOE. I think that it was a grand experiment when Don and I first got elected. We came in and there was joint finance committee meetings up the wazoo. We had all sorts of collaborative stuff, and then we turned on each other, stabbed each other in the back, and screamed and hollered. I think we have a structure of government for a reason, and I think the less that we collaborate around these certain things, I actually think we will get along better. So
But they need to communicate.
Well, hold on.
They
I'm
don't-
not finished. Hold on. Stop. I'm not finished. I'm not suggesting that we don't communicate with them, but we control the purse strings. I think it's pretty clear what we're talking about. The number of times I heard from many BOE members last year, just give me the number, just give me the number, just give me the number. Guess what? I think we give them the number and we say, see you at first reading. So I disagree with adding the collaborative nature of the BOE on the goals, and I'm sure I'm going to get heavily overridden. Councilor Clucci.
I'm not so sure that you will. I do want to share, I have communicated with Sarah Layden, who's the chair of the school finance committee, a couple of different times. And Paul, I'm going to say she's more closely aligned with what you're saying, in that we need to respect that we have different roles in this process. The school committee's role is to advocate for the students, and our role is, I don't know if I'm going to say this right, is to advocate for the taxpayer. And it's natural for those to conflict a little bit, right? I want them to be able to make their case, just like I want the fire and police, everybody else to be able to make their case for what they need to do to affect the best outcomes for our students. But at the same time, I think by collaborating beforehand on the spending number a little bit too much, that you kind of detract from that conversation. And I think they would love for us to just give them the number, let them put their first cut together, and then let's talk about allocating that number. Where is it going to the right place?
Yeah, I feel like I think it was, there's been noble efforts, but I don't think anybody came out a winner since I've been on there, since I've been here, my personal experience. So Don.
Well, just to build on that point, this is a key issue. We had to resort to modeling 0% in order to help us get to the right set of numbers. And that was very painful, very acrimonious, very public. So I don't really, I agree with what we need to do. I'm not sure that's the same approach we should take this year, but without working it in some fashion, I think just dropping a number on them, I don't know how that's gonna work. And I understand from a negotiating standpoint the need and the value of doing that.
Yeah, if I could just offer it, I'm the one who suggested collaboration, and I've been in the middle of all of these discussions, so no one appreciates the challenges more than I. I guess the larger point that I think is relevant here is that I think it's been unfortunate and somewhat unfair and a source of great frustration on the part of council members and also BOE that they come out in first reading and get crucified because their increase is whatever, and it's not 3%. And they say, your goal is at the end of this process. And so I think articulating some sort of target out of the gate would be helpful so we don't start off on the wrong foot, so to speak. And whether it's the town directing, mandating what that is, or it's some other process, is certainly, there's ways to do that.
All right, let's wrap this up. I would like to take a quick break, just a quick bathroom break. So I think we all agree that we would like to establish goals at first reading. That's an agreement. And I would suggest we can leave off the BOE language, because again, just because we omit it doesn't mean that we can't do it later. So I'm not trying to strong arm here, but I think that's, at this point, it's syntax, right? We agree that we should have if I think that's up to Sarah and John to dictate what happens from there. So, and I'm staying out of it. So I've expressed my opinion, but I won't express it during budget season. So if we look here, budget goals for first and second reading, should I say specific budget goals? Is everybody okay with that simple language? Is that okay? Betsy, I think you're trying to talk, but you're on mute. And John, go ahead and add to Betsy when she's.
I think you have to say establish
Yep.
specific budget goals for
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
school.
Yep.
For school and town first and second reading. Or maybe it's just for school and town first reading. I don't know, but
Yeah, I think we've been really just doing the first reading, like the goal, right? Because then you're fine tuning it. But
I think your second reading is effectively dealt with the 3% on mill rate.
right.
Great.
Is that okay? Is that a better way to say it for everybody? I don't know.
Yes.
And I'm okay. Is that good? Can we move on? Is that
Well,
go ahead,
I'm
John?
just, I think
Yeah.
it's as written is good. I'm just really debating your point, Paul, about the school in collaboration. And I do have full faith in Sarah and John to be able to kind of partner and align. But I do think like we do need their input in setting those goals. We can't make it unilaterally. And I think just calling it out does kind of move us forward a little bit in terms of what Jean Marie opened with needing to figure out how we improve the relationship. And so I'm still an advocate of just alluding to that we need their input as part of this, just because I think it's important for the
Okay.
relationship.
Yeah, okay, so, so John would like to add essentially in collaboration with the BOE, let's just say that, right? So is that a fair?
I think it's worth keeping, but if
No, I
if the-
know, yeah, no, but no, I'm saying, I guess what I'm saying, John, is tagging on in collaboration with the BOE as a goal, as part of the goal.
that would be
And
my preference.
yeah, okay, so I've specifically said I don't support that, but that's fine, so I'm done. Does anybody show of hand? Yeah, Don's nodding yes. John?
Yeah, I think the extra language, addresses your position and our position clearly.
So we want to say in collaboration with the BOE. Does that have general
Yes.
support? It seems like it does.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, you can't really do that without collaborating with them other than, I mean, you can set a target, but I don't know right now where they stand for this fiscal year and what they might be able to carry over. So,
Yeah, I totally agree. I think my rant was more of of course we need to collaborate with the BOE, but I think that I think we try to operate under an illusion that we are all in this together all the time, and that's not the case. There are certain roles to be played, but that's separate of these goals. So I'm going to stop my rant and I'm going to take a bathroom break. So 5 minutes, is that good? Come back in 5. On, so. How's that hard stop at 11 looking? You're on mute.
It can happen.
I just told my family I'm home before noon no matter what. So I'll let Dawn finish it up if we have to.
Yeah, and before we leave, the communication committee wants direction from the council out of this forum about the expectation on all the committees, all the ad hoc committees going on. Comp plan, charter review. We'd like some direction on what the expectation is.
Well, there's written charges.
I have verbiage for all of that, my dear.
Oh, you do?
Yes, I do.
Well, share it electronically so I can just throw it
I
up.
put, I can read my writing.
I mean, that's what- I mean,
Complete
I guess-
GMO process by insert date. This includes ordinance review, presentation to town council for debate and approval.
But with the charter and the downtown committees, I mean, those guys have charges, so they should be following what their charge
Right.
is, right?
And aren't they supposed to report back by March? I thought, the end of March?
Yeah,
Because
or you
we're
look at
hoping
more
to
of a
get 'em on
timeline.
yeah, at least the charter.
We'll figure it out. I don't.
All right. I
No
guess
biggie. If we're looking for a timeline, we can set a timeline. So
No,
Um,
just under the impression there was an expectation that the communication committee was to coordinate or whatever the strategy of the communication on all these committees. So we were thinking that out of today's meeting, we would get some direction. That's all. It doesn't have to be a lengthy conversation. If it's going to be fully the responsibility of the committees, that's even better.
no, I see what you're saying now. I didn't know.
The counselors on each one of those committees, they can own it, not a
Yeah,
problem.
right. Those guys should just be writing. Those guys should be feeding you stuff for the newsletter and the leader, right? That's part of the responsibility of being a liaison, I would think.
That right there is the direction.
Yeah.
Don't
Okay.
even have to say anything further.
Okay.
Those guys there need to be right.
Ken, we need you to speak more often. I love the clarity.
Well, my blood pressure is like through the roof, so I'm trying to not engage in anything that's going to spike that. You do not want to see a YouTube-wide aneurysm. Come on.
take your meds.
No, I don't think, and I don't think you're speaking figuratively. I think right now your blood pressure is through the roof. Correct?
Oh,
Yeah, you're not kidding. Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, hopefully, do you want me to put on some background music or some wave sounds?
Oh, I tried square breathing, meditation.
Seriously, do you have severe hypertension right now?
I don't have at all. I'll tell you what. No, I'm not going to tell you what, but it all started on a specific date this month.
Oh, okay. All
And
right,
I
I'm
just-
not going
I
there.
just can't get it down. I just can't get it down. And I mean,
Can I guess the date? Last ordinance
no, don't want to discuss.
Oh, stop.
committee?
All right,
We could-
I just texted you verbiage for the next one, Paul.
Okay.
I hope I typed it right.
All right. Where's Tom?
And that's, I just threw that date in there. Just,
Yep.
we can,
Are we on to the next item? Is that what it is?
Yeah, we are. I'm just going to start it. So the next item is council agrees to revisit the growth management ordinance as required by the current ordinance in conjunction with the BOE. The town council will come up with an agreed upon set of facts and language for all to use and reference.
I think those are two separate things, aren't
Me
they?
too, but hold on. Jean Marie has proposed keeping that language and adding complete the entire GMO process by 6:30. This includes review of the ordinance, presentation to the town council for debate and final approval.
I'd like to add to that though.
Yep, go ahead. Yep.
Uh-oh.
No. I agree with what you
Okay.
said. I would just like to remove the BOE reference in there. We've been there and done that.
Oh,
We did it.
Remember, BOE's growth is a little different than the GMO growth. It's, migration growth and
right.
birth
I
growth.
said, And
we
I
already
just
did.
said that the BOE stuff needs to
Yeah.
go, so.
We did do that. I mean, we.
Yeah, we did it in that
We had a-
workshop last December, if you remember, which was a
Yep,
fantastic workshop, I thought.
yep, we had a joint workshop. We've done it. We accomplished that.
Plus, they were at our last ordinance meeting. They sat in and gave some feedback, so,
We can wordsmith this. Just give me a second.
yeah, that's fine. That should say review in ordinance, meaning review in ordinance committee.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Oh, I
doesn't
know
matter.
what you're saying. Yeah, includes.
Yeah.
review.
Sorry, I can't type either.
No, it's okay. I'm the one that's publicly, everybody can publicly see my spelling with it. The process is to be by 6/30/2020, which includes reviewing in the ordinance committee and
Presentation of the town council for debate and approval. In
yeah.
other words, it should all be wrapped up by June 30th at the latest.
Okay, so Jean Marie is, and again, this is just her suggestion, so. John, go ahead.
Question. So, yeah, this is near and dear to my heart too. And I'm guessing my blood pressure's gotten higher because of it, but I, can't give you specific figures. But revisit is very fluffy to me. We could revisit and do nothing. I mean, with this, I mean, we gotta make recommendations, right?
No.
Yeah, Don, this is the old goal, so here, look, I can do
Isn't that
this.
the old-
Oh, I'm feeling much better. Thank
Yep.
you.
Yeah, take out the revisit. It should say the growth management ordinance, the
got
growth
it.
management process is to be completed by, there you go.
Yep.
I think this is good written as is, and I wouldn't make any suggestions to change this specific focus on the GMO. But, Ken has done a good job helping me understand how the GMO is really just one tool that we have at our disposal around growth management. And I'm just wondering, do we want to elevate this to be broader about growth with this as like one specific thing we're going to accomplish to growth management? And then are there other things surrounding that we want to do in the rest of the year?
It is residential only, right? That's currently stated.
Yes.
I don't know
Well-
what those other things are, but I'm just saying, just throwing that out as a provocation as we talk about growth.
So,
I'm agreeing.
just to try to keep the train on the tracks, John, I appreciate that suggestion. So, but let's hold that for 1 second. The bullet as written, is everybody okay with the bullet as written?
Yes.
John Clucci.
Honestly, the time frame sounds a little aggressive to me. You're going to be bunching up with the budget vote, and we don't have a clear timeline for the comprehensive plan. So I mean, you can keep it there. I feel like that's aggressive right now.
But John, we've been
last-
on this for 13 months. So,
Right.
I mean, sooner or later, you cut the bait or fish. Is that what that saying is?
You
Yeah.
fish or cut bait, but it's the
Fish
same.
or cut bait. We've been on this 13 months. Okay?
Yeah, it's been going on.
You don't
for
get any
some
more liberal
time.
than this. I agree with it.
We can always extend the date if we really had to, but I feel we have to set a date. I just threw this in there. I'm not wed to the date.
Well,
But I sure as heck don't want it any sooner than June 30th because we've got to bring it out of ordinance and then it's got to go through the whole process with the council. So I'm trying to be realistic.
And I also think this is really just a way of holding ordinance's feet to the fire. It says for debate at the council. This might not get done till September. We're still looking at first reading, public hearing, second reading, and we're probably looking at a lot of council workshops because I know we're in 7 different places in growth, right? I think we're right. So this is
Fair
not
enough.
right.
More of an ordinance objective.
I'm sorry, can you show it again then? Are you saying that we'll have it complete at council by 6:30 or it's just going to come out of ordinance by 6:30?
I'm saying it's going to be all done by 6:30. Now you folks have to remember that this is just the one specific ordinance. It's
So-
not the overall, what you want to do with growth with the town. This is
I
the
agree with
one
that. Chief
ordinance.
Gray, that to be completed at the town level by 6:30, which is going to mean it's got to come out of ordinance like in March or whatever. So
Yeah, that's correct.
But to help the public, can we just put in parentheses residential construction? I mean, so people, I think the average person doesn't understand that.
The GMO is residential. It's inherent in the document.
I know that, but as if the public is reading this, is this something we're going to assume they know, or
Just plug in the word residential before growth management ordinance.
$1 million question, are you considering apartments residential?
Yes,
Yes.
not as defined by the appraiser. No.
I'd like to consider commercial construction, which is considered which is residential, according to the assessor's definition, it's commercial. So, but I'm not going to go there. So we'll
That's got that. The reason it's considered commercial by the
I understand.
assessor is because the town is making money off from those suckers, those apartment
Marie,
buildings, to be honest.
You and I can talk about this over coffee. It would take
They
6
still
hours
come-
to get
they
into the
still come
beginning.
under the GMO because they have to have permits for residential growth. So it's.
All right. Time out.
Sorry.
That's not what we're here for. All great thoughts, but I'm shutting it down. If the goal is to have this completely done by 6/30/2020, I agree with Clucci. I think the timeline's too aggressive because at the council level, if you waved your magic wand and gave it to us tomorrow at a council level, I believe this is a 2.5 month process because
Well, put it,
because every counselor is going to want to workshop this. This is you guys. So the ordinance committee, you guys have work to do, but I think we're underestimating what the entire council is going to want to do.
so make it 9:30.
So I think it's too aggressive. Now, and I
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't care.
No, I mean, I'm sorry, Ken had his hand up before me.
Yep.
do 10 first.
All I'm going to suggest is I agree with Jean Marie, just frame it differently because I interpreted it when she stated it differently. I think the recommendations, because that's what the original charge was, to bring recommendations to the council. The ordinance committee doesn't make the decisions
Right.
by June 30th.
Right.
Okay, that's just the recommendations by June 30th, and then the public process starts. So you're right, we're probably into September before the changes really do. And that to me is not too aggressive. Again, I plead the counselors to read the ordinance.
It'll take more than once, by the way. You can't get it straight
So-
in one.
Well, if you stay in the ordinance,
All right. Okay. We get it. Read
No,
the ordinance,
Paul,
Betsy.
You've given a lot of opinions, Paul, I guess, but this is really, if you talk to your constituents, this is a huge issue. This is I heard this way more than I even heard about taxes, is about growth. And we punted it all last year. We let a lot of things get in front of it. I appreciate that Jean Marie brought this aggressive. I don't even think it's that aggressive because we've been working on it, like that Ken said, for 13 months. When is ever the time to make this a priority? We have to review it. They've been reviewing it. They've had several meetings on it. We need to prioritize it. It needs to be a priority for this council to get changes to that growth management ordinance. Let's get it out there. Let's debate it. Let's do it by 6:30. It is one of the highest priorities of this town. And yes, it's going to take bumping some things and some extra work, but if you talk to people in this town, this is the number one thing they want to talk about and that they want us to work on. And just because it's hard doesn't mean we should keep punting it. This work has been going on for 13 months. So, and I think even I think Don, you and, at least Don ran on this as well. So this is something the town really wants to talk about. People feel overrun by things that are just coming at them, with their, like a fire hose. So
As someone who just ran,
do this.
as someone who just ran for council and won, I did not hear much about growth issues other than traffic. People whine about traffic, doesn't matter.
hold on.
I do know that people they want to know what we're going to do and where we're going to do it. And, once they realize, what's up, I didn't hear that it was an issue myself. I heard about it through certain groups, but anyway, Paul wants to move on and I
Well,
agree.
look, I think this is really important. This council is the council that is perpetually saying that we don't want surprises. And I think that we're running the risk that there's counselors, and I'll call it, there's counselors that think that this is a easy lift and that everybody's aligned. When this gets elevated to the council level, it's going to take some marinating. And I don't like changing our principles, so to speak, because we want instant gratification on the GMO. We've committed to.
What's
No.
instant about it? We've been working.
I'm talking
on it
at
for 13
Betsy. I'm
months.
talking at the. Listen, can I finish, please? We listen to you all the time. What I am saying is, when this gets to the council level, we always say this: when things get to the council level, that's when people pay attention. So I don't think it is wise of us at the. I'm not talking about Jean Marie stonewalling. I'm not talking about Don and Ken being upset because I'm talking about the fact when this gets to council and it gets to the big leagues, it's going to take some work. And we need to set this up for success. And what isn't success is to feel like we need to get it done by June. And then all of a sudden we start not respecting each other's opinions, because we need, as a council at the council level, to work this. And I think it's not unreasonable I completely agree with Ken Johnson. Get it to us by 6:30. I don't care if we do a sub goal that it's completely done by 9:30. But that's fine. Okay, John Anderson, go ahead.
I would just say, rather than continuing to debate the date at this point, can we just leave it blank? And as we think of the other things that aren't listed that are also priorities that we need to get done, can we go back and just kind of be more realistic for all those things, what we want to do and when? Because I think of the things like the budget, the downtown committee, the charter, things we've already discussed. And so there is a lot that we need to deal with. And so let's look at those holistically and then set some dates based on what we agree is the priority. Because I agree with Betsy. I think this should be a priority, but that's all relative based to the other things that we need to work through. And so I'd like us to kind of look at that list holistically and then decide, okay, where do we want to kind of accelerate and where do we want to pull back, knowing that we can't do it all at the same time?
So, Don, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, so I agree with the need for there to be a set certain date, a deadline, number one. I also agree that we need more discussion around, around the one that's proposed.
Councilor Fuji.
So when I hear everybody talk, I'm thinking more comprehensive plan, the growth management ordinance, in terms of what constituents are concerned about is, the vision, where we're going to grow, how are we going to accommodate growth, and really, and you said this as well, but the growth management ordinance is just one of several tools that we have to pace or manage that growth. But the visionary document is the comp plan, and I just recognize that we don't actually have a goal for the comp plan, although it's certainly something that's front and center for us.
Jean Marie?
And really, you should have this comp plan done prior to making changes to GMO, and that's my opinion, but it's also state statute. So let's get the goal hammered down. I think we're close. John, I agree with what you, Anderson, I agree with what you said in principle. I think a date in this specific case is important because frankly, I think the ordinance needs, I think Jean Marie is recognizing ordinance, they are students that need a due date for their homework. And in general, I agree with John Anderson in principle. I just think this one needs a date for all the reasons that Betsy has said and Ken has said and Don has said. Don?
So this may help, Ken. So what, even if we were to make changes and implement them, say by June, would that change what happens with permits this year?
I can't answer that. That would be Jay, but June's way too aggressive. Again, it should be recommendations to the town council, and then it's up to town council. We may table that for 3 months before the public process comes. That's when the focus is right. That's when the rubber hits the road. That's where the ordinance committee needs to socialize all its learnings and the rationale behind the recommendations of change, if any. And then it's totally up to 7 councilors to vote on that. So I agree that the 6:30, we probably need to move on. Growth is a much larger thing than the GMO. One tool, we're starting small, and maybe at some time we can look at some of the other aspects, but I don't think it's going to be this year. We got a busy year.
Betsy, and then Dawn, I think, but
Yeah,
maybe not.
so I apologize to interrupt you, Paul. So I guess I'd like to ask a question of ordinance. When are you guys going to come out with something? So you need till June to come out with something, or you get, so, I mean, it is an ordinance. We talk about bigger things, it's tools. It is an ordinance. We come out with ordinance changes all the time. You guys have to come out with some kind of recommendation. Here's what we're recommending. We do nothing to it, or we recommend that these changes happen to it. I mean, it's been through long range. They've looked at it. When are you guys prepared to come out with something?
Jean Marie, then Ken, I think.
Yeah. We are in the process now of talking to various constituencies who are involved with the GMO. For example, we have a workshop this Thursday with certain developers to get their feedback on it. We also, this isn't the only thing that's in front of ordinance. We have other things too.
Right.
So I would suggest, I mean, again, I just threw that language up there for something to put up there. I would suggest that we say we'll move it out of ordinance by 6:30. Rearrange that language if that makes sense to people, to make sure that it's out of ordinance. This is definitely the type of ordinance, and in my experience in the council, that you don't want to rush, that you want to make sure you've had full, thorough vetting through ordinance. Long range planning has looked at it, and then bring it forward to the council, because as many of you have said, and I don't disagree, that once it gets to council, then it's going to hit certain people in the face, i.e. our constituents, and then you're going to really start hearing one thing or another about it. So I think it takes time. To me, there's absolutely no rush with it, other than it does need to be done, and it needs to be done let's get it out of ordinance by June 30th.
Can I respond to that, Paul? Because
Yeah, sorry, I can't hear you. Go ahead, Betsy. Yep, sorry.
yeah, that was the response to my question. So that's where we have a difference. Jean Marie says there's absolutely no rush. That's why it's been in committee for 13 months, and we haven't had anything come out. I mean, 6:30.
It has not been in committee or looked at in committee for 13 months. That's
This is January. This is January now. So you're talking January, February, March, April, May, June, another 5 months. So if the goal is for ordinance, which I think is fine, because we don't know what the council process will look like exactly, but it sounds like they're doing a thorough job. They're meeting with developers, they're getting feedback from the BOE, et cetera, et cetera. I would just like to say, could they get this done at least by May or April or May, just so that we're not running into budget season, because we're setting ourselves up for failure if we're not getting this done. And so I really think it is a priority, at least to a number of counselors. It has been kind of stuck in ordinance. And, if we don't want to commit to a date for the full council, could we have a little more aggressive date for ordinance? That's my request.
Dawn, I think, and then Ken.
Yeah.
I think, but yeah.
I have a suggestion that I'd like to make about, can you put what you've written up there so far?
Yep.
Oh, thanks. And I hopefully this will address, what Betsy said and what some of the discussion. So the ordinance committee will complete the growth management ordinance review process, including recommendations by 6:30. We'll have a recommendation by then. And I see Ken nodding, and Ken is the most knowledgeable guy on the planet on growth management. And I've spent a lot of time on this as well, working with long range planning and with Jean Marie and in ordinance. I feel very confident that we will have recommendations. Now, whether or not those are the ones that ultimately get approved, but we'll have a spear in the ground by June 30. And I defer to Ken and to Jean Marie to tell me if I'm out of my mind.
Before I go to Ken, just can you read that, Dawn, and say, is that your suggestion?
So I'm mute.
Muted, Dawn.
As I read it, that looks perfect. Thank you.
Okay, good.
I would agree. I agree.
Great.
And I agree with that. And I definitely sense the frustration of Councilor Geisting I share that at times. But remember, this is what happens when you have committees do the work, because committees have other committee work. You know, I mean, we have anything that comes in through ordinance, we have to address with it. So there's one thing though, when we bring forward the recommendations to the town council, then it's totally in the purview of the town council to say yes, no, or adjust or whatever. Nobody is going to say that this was emotional, driven by emotions, but by facts, and all stakeholders came to the table. And I'm going to feel very comfortable with that. And the way to get that is the time happens to be extended. That's what we do. We do municipal government.
Betsy.
Yeah, I think this is a little different. You know, time is of the essence in that, you know, the town is going to have a lot of requests, you know, for a different type of housing, for increasing a lot of units. I mean, the town is changing in front of our eyes. And as we know, you know, a lot of what's driving what's happening is the one component, the fractionalization, that we do that nobody else in the entire state does for the building permits. And so I do think time is of the essence. The process is really important. But, you know, to say that time doesn't matter at all, if, you know, if another 300 units are brought in the time that we've spent debating this, again, that may be where we land. We keep the fractionalization. We encourage this type of growth. This is what we do. You know, people are going to have different opinions on that. But to say that we're going to delay that discussion, you know, as long as we've been delaying it, you know, and that debate, and yes, it's going to be messy. The developers want to make money. That's what they do. You know, there's a lot of designs on our town by a lot of people, and it's just a very important debate to have. And to say that it really, you know, time is not of the essence. The town is changing in front of our eyes, and, you know, it may be exactly what we want to do, but we have really kicked this can down the road, in my opinion, and not just looked at it, you know, full throttle. And I personally have avoided, you know, bringing something to the council. As a counselor, I think I have a right. I believe our charter and our rules and policy says, you know, I can have something put on the agenda. So, you know, some counselor could certainly drive debate of let's get rid of the fractionalization and the growth management ordinance without it going through ordinance or anything else. I've avoided doing that because I respect the process and I think the process should work. But yes, I mean, frustration is a good word now with this process, because it's time to get it out there, and it's time to start to really bring it forward.
So,
Can I just,
yeah, John, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, I just, you know, maybe one thing we need, because I feel like, again, we're talking about a date without fully understanding, or at least I don't have the full understanding of what the ordinance committee's timeline and process is and the due diligence they're going through. So to Ken's earlier comment where he talked about, you know, trying to make sure we're engaging the right stakeholders, doing all that front end work, my hope is then what we get at the council really shouldn't require too much debate, because the homework was done. And if that takes until 6:30 to get there, I'm fine with that. But I don't know what that plan is to be able to like say that's too slow, or can we go faster? So I just, maybe an action is that we need the ordinance committee to kind of help us understand at a later date, you know, what the process is and what the dates are and what they're planning to do to get this to completion.
We need to get the comprehensive plan out.
Okay, what we're gonna do is, because we're making goals, so we're gonna up and down this goal right now. For purposes of discussion, Betsy, do you want to, I'm going to say 6:30, or let's say 4:30 or 5:30. I don't want to ignore what you're saying. I don't think you have support for it, but I want to just at least, you know what I'm saying? So you're on mute, Betsy.
Well, I would say I would prefer 4:30, but as a compromise, I would propose 5:30.
Okay. So we're gonna up or down this now. So Dawn, 6:30 or another 6:30, 4:30 or 5:30.
6:30 as proposed and as indicated would be acceptable to the ordinance committee, last I checked.
Okay, Clucci,
6:30.
Anderson?
I'm fine with 6:30, but I would like to better understand the plan and the process to get there, to
Yep.
make sure it doesn't go beyond that.
You
Okay.
can contact me, Jonathan.
John, obviously Jean Marie's good with 6:30. Betsy would prefer an earlier date, 4:30, 5:30 or 6:30, Betsy?
5:30.
5:30 and 10.
6:30 and read the ordinance.
Okay. Do you want me to put that in the goal? I can put that in the goal.
I'm gonna say it every time I see everybody, I guess, this is what you have to do.
Okay, we're moving on. We have established that goal, and at this point, we had a hard stop at 11. That hard stop has been obliterated. So this is, what I foresee here is we still obviously have, we have charter, downtown, comp plan. I guess my question is it worth acknowledging these in these goals, or are we okay with that the process is in place and that will finish? Does it have to be a goal? I'm completely open to this. I'm just posing the question. So do we want to acknowledge these in the goals, yes or no? And then we'll move on from there. How's that sound? So,
I think we should.
okay. So John thinks we should acknowledge them in the goals. Don looks like he agrees we should acknowledge them in the goals. Betsy and Ken seem like, or Ken, okay. So we're acknowledging the big three in the goals. Okay. So with that being said, I guess I'm looking for someone to offer up some language for a fourth. Let's talk about the charter. All right. So the charter, I would like to offer up the goal that the charter edits will be brought to referendum on the November election. That would be, I would like to offer that up as a goal.
The charter committee is working under the supposition that it's going on the June. And that was brought up in the charter meeting that we had. 'Cause
Was it?
someone gave them dates somewhere.
No, that's fair. Is it in the charge? Do you guys know?
Yes.
I don't know.
It is in the
I
chart.
don't, yeah.
All right. Well, then it's June.
Charge, but we started later than we thought we would when we approved the charge. So
Why don't you say no later than?
I would say
Nope.
no later than the November referendum.
Yeah. And I mean, because I feel like we'd want the highest participation election for a charter.
Well, it's a good year because it's an off-cycle election year, but it can also get lost when it's a huge year for controversial.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. So the language that I proposed is changed to no later than the November election. Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay. Give me 1 second here. Do I call them edits to the charter? Or
It's review and edits.
so amendments?
Or,
to-
I don't know what the official.
Charter
word-
amendments.
word
I'm
is.
sorry, revisions.
Revisions.
correct
Thank
term.
you.
Well, revisions, I think, is more along the charter commission, but I mean, it's all right. It's fine.
Okay, all right. Revisions to the town charter will be brought to the voters no later than, what is the election date? Do we know?
It's the first Tuesday in
First Tuesday in
November.
November.
November 2.
Oh, look at that. I got it.
Nice, nice.
Does somebody want to suggest an edit to that?
Maybe just add proposed.
Proposed?
Yeah.
Yep, agreed.
Well, that's true, because we may or may not revise things.
Well, by the time they go to the voters, you will have decided what goes to the voters, but
Right.
this is semantics.
Am I safe in just kind of ripping off another goal here? Are we good? Do I have support to move on to the next goal?
Yep.
Can you guys vocalize it? Because I can't see everybody. Okay.
Yes.
And then I would like to propose the, what did we say? Downtown charter, and then let's propose a comp plan goal. I think downtown's the fuzziest one, so I'm saving it for last.
I would say the comp plan needs to be done by 6:30. It needs to be through council and everything by 6:30.
100%. So we're saying complete process finished by 6:30. I support that. So I'll let others on. Ken.
I have a question on that, if you don't mind.
Yep.
And I'm sure it's, I think I've seen it just maybe called out though for here after mention the 6:30. What was the plan on the revisions to come back to the councils on the revisions that from the feedback that you received from everybody?
It's end of this month, 1st of February.
Oh,
I mean,
okay, so it's soon.
it's
Okay,
in process, yeah.
all right, thank you.
Lon, I think you were saying something, so go ahead.
Can John Anderson weigh in on this? Because I know he's been helping us with the process and,
Go ahead,
timing.
John.
Yeah, I mean, I think 6:30 is going to be achievable. Again, just making sure that we prioritize, especially our approach for how we want to get it done. So I think, from conversations with Jay, like Tom said, we should have the first round of revisions in early February for us to kind of take another look at. I think based on, how we all feel once we get that is probably going to drive the timeline more or less. But I think to be optimistic, I think 6:30 or June 30th, whatever the date is we want to set mid-year, I think that should be what we shoot for.
Okay, I see a lot of heads nodding, but Jean Marie, go ahead.
Yeah, and the reason I put 6:30 is because then that dovetails nicely with the GMO stuff coming out. So then we'll have the comp plan will be done, and then you've got potential revisions to GMO, and then you know what you're basing it off from since the comp plan's done, and then everything is done in an orderly fashion.
Okay, all right, so
The only thing we might want to add in, and I'll look to the other counselors to help with some language, is I know we do want to make sure that we do provide sufficient engagement with the public as we get to 6:30. And so that's just more of like a principle I think we want to make sure we try and stick to when it comes to getting it done by 6:30.
Tom, with the comp plan, it's related to state law. Are we submitting it to the state planning office?
Yes.
And do they need to go through a process to say that it's consistent with state law or something along those lines? I'm just wondering if that might push the final timeline out a little bit.
We're likely to send up the draft shortly after, maybe simultaneously with releasing this next round, kind of early February, to get that review process started. Jay's been in touch with them. I don't expect that there's going to be any kind of landmines or any great aha moments, but we'll initiate that as soon as we think it's appropriate, if you will. I don't want to get ahead of things, but I'm quite hopeful this next round of revisions is going to go in large part to address the concerns that you all expressed last month.
John Anderson, is that sub bullet? I would support that sub bullet. Do you like just that basic?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good with that simply.
Would everybody support that sub bullet that just says emphasis on public engagement? I do think that should be spelled out as a goal. I don't know why I keep leaning in like this, like I'm getting closer.
For emphasis, it works for emphasis. Yeah, absolutely.
You think I get used to this after a while, right?
Yeah, but we need to, be mindful of also, there's also been already 4 public engagements. Okay.
Yep.
So, yeah, we'll continue that, but public engagement doesn't start when it hits the council. This has been going on for a while. So.
Yeah, no, I think what it is it's almost like we just don't want to lose it, right? I think that I think there's a lot of concern about public engagement with this process, and I think it's specifically because it was just sat on the shelf for so long. And I can respect not wanting to lose that engagement, right? So I think it's important that we remind ourselves.
And I fully agree with you, Ken, but I think because it's been going on so long and so much has changed in the environment, I think it's just requires us again to keep it top of mind.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And that's really, I think, why we need to keep it top of mind, is just because it has gone on for so long.
Tom?
I would just mention technically from state law, all that is technically required is a public hearing and singular vote of council. There has been universal discussion, I think acceptance that no, we want to layer in additional process. And what John and Jay and I have talked about is really, at the very least, following the ordinance adoption process, first reading, public hearing, second reading. So there's probably a 6-week window just associated with that process. And then we can fill in additional process as may be needed.
Okay, let's, Don, and then we're gonna move on, Don, unless you're shifting.
Just one quick point, not only that for public engagement, but also an implementation plan in terms of a state requirement.
Okay. Don, sorry, Don, you muted yourself at the end, but yes.
Yeah, that shouldn't be lost.
Well,
What?
I'm sorry, I have to chime in just a little bit. I've had some pretty extensive conversations with Being Municipal that oversees the comp plan. As actually, I let Tom know that they said, get it to us the sooner the better. Okay. Implementation plan, like any other project, is a follower of the plan. Okay.
That may be, but it is a statutory requirement.
That is correct. You must implement it after you've established it, and you must have a plan to do that, but it's not all at the same time.
This was a point that was raised very clearly from the council. I expect the next draft you'll see at least a process proposed for implementation. It may not have the granularity, but it will lay out how we intend to implement this over time.
Right, but and it won't be comprehensive
No,
implementation.
it's not going to be a
Right.
a fully developed matrix that goes.
I'm trying to level set expectations because I can sense some turbulence here.
But I think, for the goals, do we want to mention, that, not by 6:30, but that there will be an implementation plan following for the council goals for the year? Because, like if you look at the downtown committee, and this isn't it's not a criticism of anyone, but, it took a while to get that downtown committee set up because it wasn't on everyone's radar, even though the downs had passed, so I think it's worth mentioning, that as a goal, it's an implementation plan, will follow, and it doesn't have to have a specific time frame.
Betsy, how's that look?
Perfect.
Is that good?
Yep.
Like it.
I like it too. That's good. Yeah. Does that have support? I think it does. Good. Okay. Am I wrong in thinking that once we finish this downtown discussion that the goals are over, or did somebody come in here with okay, I am right. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that I'm not
Yes.
John.
And I
But that's why I'm asking.
and I have a hard stop at noon because I have
I
to
think
work
we're
this
circling the
Okay.
drain. I mean, we're
Jean Marie, you had the one goal that you said at the beginning, which I thought was good about the school.
yeah. Okay. So let's. Okay. So okay. Fair. So let's.
There, her goal for the school thing.
Yeah. So let's talk about downtown, and then I was just asking, is there a conversation after that? Sounds like there will be, which is cool. So let's first talk about, do we want a goal for the downtown committee?
Their goal is to report out by June 1 in the charge, just so
Okay.
you know.
Councilor Clutie?
I was going to say, I don't know that we need a council level goal for this one, because we're going to receive their report. But I can't say that I'm clear on what action we might try to take after that. So I think it's already in process. It's in motion. I think they'll do their job, and we'll get our report. But I don't know what kind of overarching goal I would assign to it.
I think that's fair. Anderson and then Hamel?
Yeah, I would just say it's probably kind of in the same vein that we talked about with the comp plan and implementation, where we're going to get some recommendations from them, and then it's going to be up to us to figure out how do we implement those, if we do implement those. And so I think it's going to be more like, once we get the material, what are we going to do about it, and make sure that we don't lose sight of it.
May I just simply suggest so we don't lose sight of the fact that it's an important initiative this year, that we included in this list, but it could be a real soft goal, just that the council will support the committee to meet its charge.
Don, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I do. I'm in favor of that point that Tom made. I just want to make sure that I think that if it's not on the list, then I think there may be issues with omission, with people spotting it as being omitted, especially if we're going to be including, the GMO and, other things, the comprehensive plan and other ad hoc work.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's important to acknowledge it here that way, right? When we read these and vote on these, we're acknowledging it. So I guess to the wordsmithing, Anderson, I feel like, do you have anything for wordsmithing here? Tom, what did you say? The council
Council will support the downtown committee in completing its charge or meeting its charge. I don't know what the right word is. And then that's kind of self-fulfilling. The charge is very detailed, specific with dates, deliverables, and the like.
Was there overall deadline?
6/1.
Is that cool?
Yep. I think it's good.
Could I ask a quick question? I know we don't have time to talk about it, but where does the community center fit in with that? I mean, that work was done and then the pandemic hit.
So I mean, as far as the community center is concerned, I mean, we can consider taking action on it, but I think, I mean, this was probably months ago, but I mean, I think for all intents and purposes, when Dawn and I met with the Downs folks, I mean, at this point, geez, 4 or 5 months ago, the last time we had a powwow with them, I mean, we I said, I don't want to speak for the whole council, but you guys are operating under the assumption that, whatever you do is private. So several people, which I think is legitimate, have mentioned we owe it to the committee to vote on something, and I would be open to it. I just, as far as I'm concerned, that process was halted, and I couldn't even speak intelligently about where the process is on their end. I don't know if the edge is coming or not, or in between, and so I don't. In my mind, it's tabled indefinitely, but that's probably, maybe that's not appropriate. Maybe we have to vote on it. I have no idea. So
Okay, thanks.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. The thing I'd say is that that needs to be developer driven anyway, regardless of what happens. So I think we'd be hearing something from the developers, with any next steps.
Yeah.
I don't feel a need for us to bring that up at this point.
But I did, just to be very clear publicly and to you guys, I wrote it in a chair's report about 4 months ago, but I said, we agree we're operating under the assumption that whatever they do is without the town. So.
Right.
This raises a larger issue, and I'm hesitant to bring it up, but the fact is there's conversation presumably that's going to get restarted at the school level about what they need to do with major capital needs, i.e. the K2 schools, and certainly the library is forging ahead. So getting a handle on kind of priority of major capital projects, I think, continues to be a looming. I don't know. I don't have a suggestion as to how we get our arms around that, but conversations are being had as we speak.
And that's why I mentioned with my thing was putting something in about starting discussions with the schools. Now I can't even remember what I've written here.
Yeah.
Regarding how to acknowledge and address school building needs,
Councilor,
With the
okay, yeah, so
interviews.
we're working on a new goal. Okay, so we transitioned to a new goal about something about a building and capital improvement and Kluge. And then Betsy, yeah.
This was actually probably one of my top priorities for the year, and I brought it to Finance Committee, and we where we found alignment was on our first goal that we talked about in creating better visibility into the 3 or 5 year plan. And I think that we could possibly handle this, if it's worth calling out, and it probably is, a sub bullet for how we identify, improve the way we create some vision into the capital improvement, major capital improvements, I guess is the way it's at. I want to be specific to the schools, to the community center. I think what I was kind of visioning is that there should be a logical way, and I think we have a lot of the components already there, to evaluate our capital needs or major capital needs, and maybe we can create better visibility into that.
And I would just say, I know both sitting on the library board and working with the BOE, they are very interested in engaging us more as they advance both projects. So I think there's a desire, but I think, to John, I agree with you. I think rather than getting specific to specific projects, just keeping it more, making sure that we're keeping these big investments at the forefront.
Betsy, I think you had your hand raised. Do you still have your hand raised, or?
Well, I don't think the community center is totally developer driven. I think that specific proposal was developer driven, and I don't think it had a very good chance because it was very expensive. But I know that, there's a lot of people who want a community center. So I don't know if we were to vote down, if we were to take definitive action on the proposal as it came to us, would that free up the downtown committee to at least discuss, a community center? So I don't know. I'm just trying to see. And then of course, if the schools consolidate, we would have 3 town properties that potentially, could be a part of the solution here for a community center. So I don't know. I don't have anything specific, but I don't feel like the whole plan was wrapped up in whatever developers do. I guess that was, my thought. If we did it at all, I was certainly weighing more towards the side of the town owning it, towards it being a town facility.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's a fair.
So,
It's going to be hard to put a community center in the incredibly shrinking downtown area, right?
Yeah, with all the apartment buildings around it, Paul.
I couldn't resist. I apologize. Don?
yeah, I just say, I think John, good point, Saul. I think the comments that John Clucci made about, regardless of how this or what presents itself in terms of additional capital needs, and we have a sense that there may be ones from the school. We talked about the community center. There is a process that we have that we should use as a screen to help prioritize and decide. So, I defer to that rather than us trying to, if it comes through committee or comes up through other work, fine. But we have I think a place for that to go and a way to handle it.
And am I way off base thinking that there's a possibility we don't even hear about the school in this year? I mean, I'm not even convinced that the school would even be this year. I mean, to me, this is a lot of this is dictated on what these guys, on what the BOE does.
The consolidated school, you mean?
Yeah, right. The consolidated school. I'm not even convinced that it's driven by them, so to speak. But
The sense I got was that it wasn't going to be on their capital plan. They may include some funding to further the effort, but I don't think it's going to make the plan yet.
Right.
Yeah, when I talked to Sarah, I think she shared, because I think they're doing their goals meeting. I think this is going to be a topic for them to discuss on, what is their plan around the school consolidation, and what do they want to do going forward. So I think they need to align first, and then I think that's when they were going to say, okay, let's workshop with the council after we've gotten our internal alignment on what our plan is to make sure that we can bring the council along with them.
I would just observe, maybe I'm stating the obvious. The good news is the council is the gatekeeper. They must come to you. You must decide whether a matter goes to the voters and when. Just appreciate that these conversations are being had. We can either try to get ahead of these things and really know what's coming, or I'm trying to avoid the scenario whereby, some July or August, maybe as soon as this year, you're asked to put a matter before the voters in November, and it's a problem. So
I don't want to get sandbagged, because that's what it felt like last year.
well,
At
I'm
the
quite
beginning
sure
of
the
the
library is
year.
coming
So-
forward looking
I mean-
as soon as this fall.
I think last year the challenge was really a revolving door of people participating with the BOE that I think hurt communications with the council. And, as the BOE person, Sarah and I have set up a good cadence to stay connected. I know John's connected with her from a finance perspective. So I'm not concerned about being surprised, because I think we have those communication doors set and open. And, I think through that, I think with Sarah, we'll be able to kind of work through this. So I'm not super concerned about it.
Okay.
And that's,
neither was I some time ago. I'm just kidding. Ken.
yeah, in that same line, and you're right, we don't know when this is coming, but since you've got a good rapport with Sarah, I mean, I as a council would like to request the cost benefit analysis on this. And we could get that well before the discussions even start, because I really hope that was done. I'm assuming it was done, but I'm not sure where the results of that analysis was done. So in your discussions with Sarah, could you see if you could find that trove of paperwork and maybe get it to the council, because that could be a starting point well before the discussions start.
John?
This is all very good, but we are setting goals, so we got to get kind of back. Kluge, yeah.
Well, and that's where I was going, was that we really slashed our capital improvement budget last year. Almost the only thing that we really entertained was sending the fire truck to the voters. And I think it probably would be helpful as Tom's going through his work. Is there an appetite to take on any major capital improvements this year or move something forward to the voters? And if not, we might say that. Personally, I would be comfortable getting back to our regular run rate capital improvement spending, which I think was around 7 to 8 million a year is what we would typically bond out for smaller scale projects. But I don't know that we're in a place to really take on another major capital project right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, John. I think, maybe we put a line in the sand and say that the major ones are not going to come forward this year because we have a catch up year. We actually didn't put the fire truck on. The only thing we put on was a dump truck. So we do have some catch up to do this year. And we don't, the economy is looking okay, but this is still, I hate the term, unprecedented times. It still really is, with so much debt in the system. And, I'm not sure it is the year to look at major capital improvements. So I would be with you if you have a goal that you want to specify for that.
If there's any, I can take a stab at it. I guess it would be.
What would that, my question is, would that include the library expansion as a major capital improvement? Because I know they're getting ready to really.
Yep, it would.
The campaign, and so it would be good for us to tell them to sit tight.
Maybe the goal is what Tom said, is to get out in front of these things, of the big, the things that we know that we've got to catch up, plus the big ones that we know are having discussion. So I don't know the right words, but I think Tom's thought, instead of definitively saying yes or no, I mean, we know we have to do the turf field at some point. So is to get out in front of this. So, and start, I'm not sure what that goal looks like, but.
Yeah, Betsy, I want to, when I said no new initiatives, that's kind of what in my head was,
Yep.
no new, now we're discussing $20 million, right? like let's do a year without discussing $20 million plus. I mean, I agree, the turf field in my mind's despite what some people might believe, the turf field's not a major capital improvement project. It's $1 million ask. It's not a $20 million, let's say it's a $2 million ask. So I agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think that was the spirit of when I had led that off, is I would be completely open to putting a line in the sand and saying, our chair of finance is over here saying that we can probably get back to our 7 to 8 $1 million in capital improvement and maybe catch up a little bit. And precisely because we have to catch up a little bit, I don't know why we would even talk about a project that you would fund in a typical year. I mean, this is, we should be doing our best to have a very predictable year, because we know it's not going to be, right? So I wholeheartedly agree. I don't know if somebody's whipping something up, but Don?
So is that a goal? That's my question. So is that a goal then, that we would do something to the effect to revisit and update the 5-year capital plan, excluding a major, capital plan proposals this year? Something to that effect? I mean, is that what you're looking for?
And I don't want to throw out, I feel like Kluge might be typing. So, but I'd be willing to I don't want to be super arbitrary here, but I'd be willing to say, no capital improvement projects over 3 million or whatever it happens to be. To me, I'm in the back of my head is the turf and track field, the biggest capital improvement project I think I could support this year. That's my wheel spinning, but that's just me. So
maybe something along the lines of reinstate our typical capital improvement spending or budgeting, with maybe some allocation to catch up, and to defer major capital improvements over 5 million, something like that for future years.
Tom, is there anything we're discussing that's giving you nightmares? You're on mute, Tom. You're on mute.
I'm a little concerned that we can't just bury our head in the sand. I mean, these needs don't go away. So I think the value of a 5-year look is that we all need to see and appreciate that there's capital needs. What you're talking about is kind of an appetite and a timing issue. But again, I don't want to sanitize or scrub away the CIP because it's convenient and we can avoid the conversation. My job is to bring to you the needs of this community, and that's true of others. So I think the CIP needs to be a realistic look at those needs. You do control the timing of when we advance them.
But do you have any knee-jerk reaction to just limiting what, for lack of a better term, a major capital improvement? I mean, do you have something in your pipeline that you're?
Depends how you define major.
So we have a lot of flexibility to work with.
Well, but that's precisely why I'm asking you, is I don't want to be super arbitrary here. I mean, I don't know if you're coming forward with a $2 million ask or a 1.4 is the biggest ask. I have no idea. So
I mean, there are two road projects that we've kind of put on the back burner, but they're both in the $2 million range. I don't know as of right now whether either one of those is going to come forward as soon as next year, but we've got major work down in the Pine Point area and East Grand, and then the next phase of Gorham Road here that we've already invested heavily from an engineering point of view. We may well be able to leverage some good federal money, and it makes sense. So the price tag's high, but the actual local cost is low, so to speak.
But if we're talking about a number, I think, Don, correct me if I'm wrong, but the $5 million number is just a specific signal to say no library, no school. Hey, we need a year to figure this out.
Certainly,
Yeah.
nothing more than 2 million at worst case from my side.
That's what I was looking for, Tom.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm open to. I'm just trying to.
So we're dancing around setting the number. I think it seems like there's consensus around, trying to get the message out about no new major capital improvement plans. The idea is where to draw the line. John Gooch had used language to the effect, resume our, normal, capital plan investments, but we still don't know what the number is. So, it does seem to me that we would resume the plan, but this would include, not considering new major capital improvement plans.
With all due respect, why dance around it? Why not just red circle the projects that you're concerned about?
Yeah. So I don't know. I haven't done the work, but you have a better number than I do. 2.5 sounded okay to me.
But that's exactly that's what I'm trying to drive at. If we're talking that we will not support the library and the school in this year, let's just let it rip.
Just say it.
And just say
Just say it.
Because I'm willing to say that I would not support the library or the school this year. I don't think.
Right.
Me too. I'm right there. I'm
there too.
And I'm there specifically, to be very clear, I'm there specifically because I'm expecting our CIP budget to be a normal year plus. I want to catch up. So
plus that money will be spent if we don't say something like this. They'll be spending money on consulting and incurring other charges. That's not fair to anyone.
Well, I would still fund, like, if the school needs, to John Anderson's point, if the school needs a couple $100,000 to, I think that's worth debating. But we can deal with that, right? I mean, yeah, that's my point. We can deal with that when it comes. But to set an appropriate expectation, I'd be hard pressed to give an audience for anything right now. I don't even know where that even fits.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem either specifically saying that library and school projects, however you want to word it, we aren't going to entertain that this year. That's just
so maybe a simple goal would be defer any major capital improvement projects larger than $5 million.
Done.
I like that.
That takes care of the community center too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How big is 5? What would would roll that out, right?
I would get you 3 turf and track fields. 5 would get you 1/4 of a public safety building. I would get you.
I don't know. When Tom says 2.5 and we say 5, that gets me a little worried because Tom's generally.
Well, we could say 3. Let's say 3.
I don't want some of the projects that might make sense to move on because it might be access to funds right now. I don't want to preclude those from happening in a workshop today, so that's why I went with 5. But personally, I'm not looking at anything big unless it makes sense.
I can live with this. We'll deal with those other ones as they come forward anyway, right, John? I mean,
of course.
Right. So
is it that simple, or is it?
It is that simple, I think. Until the screaming and yelling begins. Yeah, it's.
But no, I'm saying goal wise, no major capital
Yeah.
investments.
Yeah.
Do you want
That
to,
means you, library and schools. No.
do you want to throw a bone in that, recognizing that these needs and these efforts are underway, that you'll continue to support their planning, whatever that might be?
Yep.
I don't know what that is, but presumably there's needs to be some level of investment to
Yeah,
better
I think
understand the need.
I can see Don just got heartburn because I don't think he wants to commit to saying $300,000 in consultant fees, right? Is that my right read there, Don? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Don. You're on mute.
And a problem with uncapped costs and liabilities, just a general,
You'll cap them all day long, though, right?
Gotcha, Don. Yeah.
No, I think the way you have it written is good, Paul, because supporting it doesn't necessarily mean we'll fund it. I mean,
Yeah, you're
supporting
right.
it means we'll hear
right.
requests and talk about it and determine whether or not it's correct. I mean, that's a level of support. Because the first part says we're not gonna even consider it. So that might mean to someone, don't even bring your planning requests. But, I think the planning requests would have to be debated, but I think
Feeling-
certainly support.
Feeling better already with that.
I like the simplicity, Paul, but I feel like we might want to balance it with our intent is to catch up on deferred capital improvement spending from 2020.
How about to revisit rather than committing you're going to spend it?
Sure.
The intent to revisit deferred capital
Deferred.
improvement projects.
And I don't have it in front of me, but there were some on the school side they deferred as well. Correct.
They did, but they were able to advance a big one, which was that storage building,
Right.
the
Yep,
CARES
I
Act money.
Yeah.
Is that Clucci? Do you like that?
Tom.
John Clucci, do you like that?
I do.
Nice.
Done.
Yes, Mr. Anderson.
I like that. Just another potential goal area. I know Jean Marie has a hard stop at,
Yeah, I gotta go to work. Yeah.
so I want to throw this one out there. And, again, I'm not wedded to it, but it just feels like it's taking up a lot of our time. Is something to do with marijuana, because it feels like there's a lot of friction right now in the community surrounding it. That's been actually more what I feel like since I've been on the council. A lot of things come through from residents around their concern. And I know we have the workshop this week that's going to kind of start the conversation. But do we need to kind of keep this as a goal or keep it top of mind this year as an area that clearly there still seems to be a lot of friction that we need to make sure we kind of lead through?
I don't think that needs to be added, and I'm not just saying that because I have to leave shortly. You notice that the State Office of Marijuana, whatever they call themselves, Eric Gunderson and crew, they've got some new rules that they're putting out. I mean, it's like, it's ever changing as to how they're approaching. And having spent, you want to know why growth management didn't get anywhere, it's because of marijuana, to be honest with you. Marijuana took all the oxygen out of the ordinance committee. So I would say we don't need any goals per se on that. That's something that will be dealt with as it comes along. It's going to be part of that. And I do give all the credit in the world to Paul and Dawn for bringing forward a workshop that brings the parties together. But I don't know what more you can do with it, because you do have to be careful of the state regs around it, which they drive me crazy too. But anyway.
By not having it on there, I just wanted to put it out there as a potential thing.
I think it's a really good idea, but I do feel like it has gotten a lot of attention and that we will be dealing with it even without a goal, because we've approved all of these things. Tom has tasked, as well as the council, our assistant town manager, I feel like has his finger on the pulse of it. They have taken the actions of actually going out to the facilities and things like that. So I guess I agree with your goal, John, but I'm comfortable that that this is being covered. And it is a moving target because the state regs are do change and all of that. And I think it, and people are showing up at meetings and we're continuing to approve these things. So in interest of time, I guess, and the goals getting too overloaded, I really feel like this is going to get attention. So I agree with the thought.
I agree with the thought as well, and I agree with Jean Marie. I think we're doing what we can, and I think if we find ourselves next year that we slipped, then I think the purpose of a goal is to either keep doing. It might be necessary next year. I think it's it's a possibility, but I think right now I'm comfortable that we're doing what we can. But
All right, that sounds good.
Well, does anybody have any other? I don't want to diminish if anybody had a goal that they didn't get to. So are we good before we?
I have one more. Sorry, I know I saw Ken say 5 minutes, 3 minutes now. So the only thing that I would just kind of throw out there, and again, I don't know the goal, but it's just something that is top of mind, is like COVID and recovery, and what does it mean for us as a council? And it might not be a goal, but it might be just something that we think about, like, because there's still, I think, a lot of unknowns. And I know, Tom, you're putting forward a couple of things that are somewhat COVID related with what the town was doing. And I think that Fairfield Inn thing might be somewhat related to COVID. And so just like making sure that stays top of mind for the council, that like we're still in a lot of areas of unknowns. And so there might be things that pop up and we need that flexibility to address it as it comes up.
John, are you concerned we're going to forget that we're in the middle of COVID?
I just don't know if we need like a specific goal that just says, hey, this is still going to be a thing we're going to have to deal
I think
with.
we literally are all just carrying it around all.
Yeah.
John, I like that. It could be a simple one. Continue to support our residents and businesses as we move through the COVID pandemic.
I'd be willing to throw that. I'd go a step further and add town staff.
Yeah.
So I'd say residents,
All right.
Yeah.
town staff.
That's
I like
fine.
And probably move it closer to the top.
Yeah, that's a good point. In fact, I'll put it right at the top because it's just
Yeah. Good umbrella.
Yeah. Mr. Colucci, can you say that again, please?
Continue to support town residents, businesses, and staff as we move through the COVID-19 pandemic.
And recovery.
Perfect.
We put a little.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I have to go to work.
I do too.
Yeah.
And can we put the town residents, businesses, school, and town staff? Because
Yeah.
that was where we went awry last year.
And town staff as we continue to move through the COVID-19 pandemic
John, that's our best goal, and we did it in 2 minutes.
into
Done.
And
recovery.
it's pandemic and recovery.
Yeah, I put recovery afterwards. Yep.
All right.
And I'll put that up top. The formatting got, I don't.
You can wordsmith a little more if you want. So
Yeah. If you guys have if I have permission for you guys to have Tom or somebody edit this, I'm all done with this. So.
Full editing privilege is granted.
Hey.
Thank you.
Just
Oh, look at this. We're right at 12 o'clock. Good
just
job.
a question,
Thank you.
expectation of approval. I don't think we can necessarily put this on the next agenda, so we'll go on to your February 2 agenda. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
February
I'm sharing this with everybody right now, so you can look at it yourselves. Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Adjournment?